My husband left me in an Italian town after a fight, thinking I'd come back. But I didn't. Now he's the one trying to find me. Let's see how she gets back, Ethan jokes, slamming the car door in the evening air. Our rental car's taillights faded as they disappeared around the tight Italian street, leaving just dust and my husband's friends' laughter. I stood paralyzed, mouth wide mid-sentence. Our disagreement outside the modest cafe was rendered irrelevant by his unimaginable deed. He's coming back, I muttered, getting odd eyes from people eating dinner at sidewalk tables. This is just to scare me. The knot in my stomach intensified as minutes became hours. Darkness fell over the unknown town whose name I couldn't pronounce. I never envisioned Ethan drinking that much at lunch when I begged him not to. His friends, college buddies celebrating their yearly guys' reunion that I grudgingly joined, encouraged him. When I suggested returning to our hotel, Leo replied, "She's always controlling you, man." Ordering another round. Ethan followed me out, his words garbled but his wrath clear. Both sides' years of hatred erupted quickly, making the fight ugly. He hissed, "Your purse has your passport, right? Before getting behind the wheel. Then you'll figure it out. You're so smart, always telling me what to do." Complete night descended as reality set in. Suddenly, the lovely Italian town felt dangerous. Cash count, €80, $37. Too little for a trip home and a hotel night. Ethan's wallet held my credit cards. When my small purse was full, he offered to carry them. I discovered the lowest pension in a shabby room above a bakery with a tiny bed and corner sink. Although she knew no English, the old woman who escorted me to the room patted my arm affectionately. "He blocked me," I gasped, glancing at my phone. 27 Ethan calls went to voicemail. Unanswered text messages arrived. Leo, Daniel, and all Ethan's carmates were tried. All blocked. I shuddered as I realized this was a premeditated humiliation. Breaks in sleep were punctuated by optimistic phone checks and panic. By daybreak, I believed this nightmare would cease. Ethan would apologize and blame me for overreacting to his joke. I'd be angry but relieved to return to our carefully crafted life in Boston, where he was a respected architect and I was his supporting wife who'd given up her design job to manage their home and social calendar. He didn't arrive. On the second day, I rationed my money and bought only a sandwich for lunch while touring the town's perimeter, checking every hotel and restaurant for our tour group. By dark, I learned they'd gone to Florence without me. On the third day, a friendly cafe proprietor saw me waiting outside and offered me free espresso and, in terrible English, directions to the police station. The officer looked unsurprised by my narrative, as if abandoned tourists were common, but his limited English and my non-existent Italian left me with a filed report and a sympathetic nod. The hardest decision of my life came that afternoon. In front of a crowded pawnshop display, I removed my wedding ring, the 2-carat diamond Ethan had upgraded on our 5th anniversary to replace our humble band. The merchant gave me significantly less than its worth but enough to support my next step. "America, call family," the pawn trader said, counting euros. Though I nodded mechanically, a different idea was emerging inside. Family meant explaining, hearing my mother's "I told you so" about Ethan's rage, and facing acquaintances who saw our marriage's flaws I'd tried to hide. When I arrived, the bus station was silent. I only saw travel magazine locations on its electronic board. An overnight bus to Rome connected to ferries, buses, and locations Ethan and his buddies wouldn't look for me if they tried. Finger hovered on my father's name and contacts. He sent money for a flight home in one call. One call would take me back to my existence of steadily shrinking to fit Ethan's ego and demands. Ethan joked about hiding my portfolios when I considered returning to interior design. He asked, "Why complicate things? We don't need the money, and I need you focused on our life." I chuckled at it then, but sitting in that dingy station, I viewed it as another fence in his pen surrounding me. "Where you go?" inquired the ticket agent, an older woman with sympathetic eyes who'd been watching me stare at the departure board for 20 minutes. "Greece," I said, realizing my choice. "The furthest coastal village you can get me to." 14 hours later, I fell off the last bus, stiff from uncomfortable seats and strain. A place whose name I couldn't pronounce has whitewashed homes and the fragrance of salt air and olive groves. My phone battery died between nations. My stomach was empty with hunger, and the weight of what I'd done, or been done to me, weighed on my shoulders. Exhaustion blurred my vision as I headed toward the town center. 3 days of emotional whiplash had left me raw, alternating between rage at Ethan, anxiety of my uncertain future, and a strange, unexpected glimmer of deadly release. I could spend 2 nights in the cheapest room with my leftover euros. After that, I had no goal, friends, or local language words beyond please and thank you. But as I watched the sunset turn the Aegean waves gold and pink, I felt tranquil for the first time in years. Ethan wanted to teach me reliance. Instead, he accidentally freed me. As I left the settlement, the Greek sun burnt my feet in sightseeing sandals. Dehydration, hunger, and mental weariness made my world spin after my water bottle ran out hours earlier. Silver-green trees bordered the dusty route, their leaves gleaming like coins in the wind. I faintly saw olive orchards before my knees crumbled. I scarcely felt the ground collide with my face. A peculiar peace swept over me as darkness edged my vision. Maybe it was fitting. Abandoned by my husband in one country, collapsed alone in another. I closed my eyes, exhausted since Ethan left. Fosmu, Koritsimu? My light, my girl? She spoke through my haze, followed by aged hands rolling me over. An aged face with deep creases and warm, concerned eyes came into focus. She quickly spoke Greek, caressing my cheeks and offering a canteen. Water revived me enough to sit up, but my head still spun furiously. She called herself Daphne, repeating it while pointing. She gestured Claire. I attempted it. Daphne lifted me up, her petite figure surprisingly strong. She pointed to an olive tree-lined stone home and indicated walking. She led me carefully up the slope, and I nodded, powerless. I entered the farmhouse kitchen to the smell of herbs on wooden beams and something tasty on an ancient stove. Daphne placed me at a shabby wooden table before calling for help. A man's voice responded, and an elderly man with a sunburned face and silver mustache stepped in the doorway cleaning his hands. Daphne? Yanis pointed to his wife. He tentatively nodded at me, his eyes inquiring yet friendly. Daphne gave me a drink of chilled water and a bowl of basic soup. As the perfume reached my nose, my stomach growled, making Daphne smile. The evening was a mess of miscommunication. I used minimal words, hand gestures, and tears to describe my circumstance. Daphne nodded like she understood, but I knew she couldn't. Yanis was quiet but attentive, asking Daphne gesture-based questions. I took their spare room, a basic room with whitewashed walls and a tiny bed covered in a handmade quilt. I fell asleep, too fatigued to protest. Crowing roosters and fresh bread greeted morning. The foot of my bed had a basic cotton dress and cardigan that seemed decades old but just laundered. They were loose on me but a wonderful change from my trip suit. Daphne smiled at me and served strong coffee and delicious bread with olive oil and honey in the kitchen. I felt embarrassed after dawn cleared my head. I was fed and clothed by these strangers without inquiry. I needed to explain, pay, and move on. I expressed my thankfulness and want to return to the community using bad English and my phone's translation software, charged by Yanis adapter. Daphne's face dropped quickly. She vigorously shook her head, pointing outside to the rain on the windows and then to my still blistered feet. Stay, she said, using one of her few English words. Rest. I tried to depart several times over the next 3 days but was gently resisted. Daphne stopped me at the door with my purse and shoes, her sorrowful expression making me feel guilty. She held my hand and opened a little wooden box on the mantel to expose photos. Her fingers trembled as she pointed to a young woman with Daphne's eyes and Yanis' smile. Irini, she whispered, pointing far away. Australia. She cradled and held her hand at waist height, indicating a child, shedding tears. Grandbaby, she said in English, pointing to a recent baby photo. No, see? Then I understood. Daphne saw me as a replacement for her daughter. My heart broke for her loss, not manipulation. I nodded slowly and put my purse on the door hook. As I adjusted to their agricultural life, new rituals emerged daily. Daphne taught me how to pick chicken eggs without scaring them and hang laundry so the mountain air would catch it. Yanis patiently taught me to recognize vegetable garden weeds after I accidentally pulled out a herb. The labor was physical, unlike my meticulously groomed life in Boston, yet rewarding in ways I'd forgotten existed. My body objected at first, used to designer gyms and measured workouts. My hands got calluses and muscles I didn't realize ached each night. Each day, my pain subsided and my strength increased. Most crucially, farm chores and language lessons replaced my ongoing mental cycle of abandonment. Sitting on the modest porch while Daphne stitched and Yanis smoked his pipe at night, I found serenity. My betrayal still hurt, but here, among ancient olive trees and rural life, it felt like an unexpected chapter. Daphne sat with me shelling garden peas 2 weeks following my arrival. After thoughtfully studying my face, she asked slowly in her improving English, "Home? You want to go home?" She gestured like a plane and pointed at America. I was surprised by the question. Home. Our stylish Boston brownstone with designer furniture and matching decor came to mind. It also highlighted Ethan's controlling behavior, his helpful management of our finances that left me without independence, his subtle discouragement of my friendships, and his dismissal of my job goals. I cried as I spoke in a language Daphne couldn't comprehend but felt feelings that crossed the linguistic barrier. I told her about Ethan's betrayal, years of gently giving up parts of myself to make peace, and being abandoned like baggage in a distant country. As I spoke, Daphne's aged hand covered mine. She pointed to her heart, then the farm, then me once I finished. It was clear, I could stay if I wished. Work, I responded gently, imitating Giannis's olive tree care. I stay. I work. Daphne's smile burst like the Aegean daybreak. She nodded and squeezed my hand before returning to the peas, as if we'd decided on tomorrow's dinner rather than a life change. My olive-growing education began when I stayed. Next morning, Daphne woke me up with Irene's work attire and thick boots when stars still shone. I followed her and Giannis to the grove, where the first light of dawn barely revealed the ancient trees, half asleep. Elias, Daphne replied, pointing to the fruit-laden branches. She delicately raked the branches with wooden rakes to release the olives onto nets below. My first attempt rained branches, leaves, and a few olives, prompting Giannis' meticulous correction. My city-soft hands had blisters by mid-morning, the sun shining overhead, and my shoulders burning from exertion. Boston lady hands, Daphne mocked, scrutinizing my palms at lunch. She returned with a herbal, beeswax-scented salve from the house. The cooling relief was immediate as she put it on my raw flesh. Tomorrow, better, she said. To her surprise, she was right. I improved my technique, strength, and hands every day. Within weeks, I could work with them for hours without complaining, proud of the fruit piles. Sorting was harder than harvesting. We carefully selected the olives by quality at a large table under a pergola, perfect for premium oil, slightly blemished for second grade, damaged for soap production. Daphne initially watched me closely and gently corrected my blunders. Her corrections decreased as my eye learned minor differences. You learn fast, Giannis said one evening, improving his terrible English and my basic Greek. He gave me his highest compliment, and I felt warm. I learned beyond the groves in Daphne's kitchen, which originally intimidated me with its lack of modern amenities. My Boston cooking skills included following fancy magazine recipes for dinner gatherings that delighted Ethan's coworkers. Daphne's cuisine was based on years of experience and observation, not measuring cups or temps. Watch, she'd say, kneading bread dough with practice. I tried to emulate her moves but failed miserably. My first outside stone oven loaves were deformed, underbaked, or burned. Daphne advised me to practice, breaking up my worst attempts to taste them. All learning is waste. I found her acceptance of imperfection revolutionary. In my past, mistakes were hidden, not stepping stones to mastery. The simplicity of their meals showed how processed my American diet was. Everything came from their land or surrounding farms. Sun-warmed veggies, morning eggs, and cheese from the goats down the road. The flavors were fresh and needed only olive oil, lemon, and Daphne's garden herbs. This diet and work altered my body. As lean muscle replaced fat, my luxury clothes loosened. Olive oil soap and sweat brightened my skin, once preserved by pricey creams. A stranger peered back at me in the small mirror over the bathroom sink. Tanner, stronger, and somehow more substantial despite weighing less. Daphne and I communicated beyond labor and food as my Greek vocabulary grew. Her black and white village childhood photos were displayed in her picture albums during evening breaks. I was surprised to learn she taught before joining her family's olive business after marriage. Imitating keyboard typing, she asked, "You?" She saw images of my interior design projects from before marriage on my phone, a career Ethan had disregarded as a hobby. Daphne pointed out her favorites and made admiring sounds as she studied them. She said, "Beautiful thinking," patting her temple. Her affirmation of my creative labor brought tears to my eyes, simple appreciation that Ethan had steadily withheld throughout our marriage. Daphne taught me to knit one rainy afternoon, patiently letting me drop stitches and make uneven rows. My first project was a lumpy, uneven scarf I fashioned by hand. I was more proud of it than the luxury cashmere Ethan gave me for Christmas. Next came a clay mug Giannis helped me make and a woven basket a neighbor taught me. Each thing had hours of study and connection, stories no luxury could. As I became less materialistic, my collection grew. Daphne and Giannis approached me one morning after 3 months of without pay except accommodation and board. They showed me the small amount of olive oil they crushed and packaged from our harvest in a small building. "Market day," Daphne said, pointing to the calendar. "You come." Locals and tourists explored the village market, where farmers and artists sold their items. Daphne and Giannis placed golden green oil, olive soap, and preserved olives on their plain table. They surprised me by placing me at the front of the table to talk to customers. My terrible Greek and their limited English caused confusion and hilarity, but sales increased throughout the day. Daphne gave me a euro envelope after the market closed. "Just, your part," she said. "Fair work, fair pay." I looked at the small amount, maybe enough for one supper at Ethan and my favorite places. This money symbolized independence acquired via hard work, which I hadn't enjoyed in years. No attachments, no hidden gratitude or compliance expectations, just fair pay for honest effort. I kept the envelope beneath my pillow that night, touching it occasionally to establish its authenticity. Ethan took charge of our finances, to simplify things, leaving me with credit cards tied to accounts he oversaw during our decade of marriage. This modest stack of euros was the first step toward reconstructing my life. As I fell asleep, I realized I hadn't thought about Ethan during market day, preoccupied with Greek transaction terms and product pride. Olive trees, cookery courses, and the rising confidence that I was capable of more than he had ever allowed me to believe had replaced him in my thoughts. Daphne and Giannis asked me to dine at the village square taverna the next week, my first since arriving. A borrowed blouse from Daphne made me uneasy as we entered the busy business. Michalis, the owner, enthusiastically hugged the couple before looking at me. "Our American," Daphne proudly remarked in Greek, a term I know refers to me, Claire. Michalis grinned and took us to their usual table. Giannis cleared his throat and spoke carefully English over grilled seafood and village wine. "Claire, we want talk business with you." He surprised me with his seriousness. Had I erred? Was I ready to move on? Daphne patted my hand across the table and continued where her husband left off. "We old now? 68, 70 years?" she said to Giannis. "No children here. Irini not coming back." Giannis nodded solemnly. "We think retire soon. 2, 3 years? But olive trees," he gestured. 200 years old. Need young hands." Understanding made me gasp. Daphne smiled with crinkled eyes. "You learn fast. Work hard. We teach everything." She spread her hands in offering. "Business yours." The idea shocked me. They scarcely knew me, a foreigner who came into their life months before. They offered a future I couldn't foresee. "But I don't know enough," I mumbled. "The trees, the pressing, the business side." "You learn." Giannis insisted. "We teach. No rush." My real apprenticeship began that night. Not only an extra pair of hands, I inherited generations of knowledge. Each morning, Giannis showed me how soil variances affected taste profiles, how to spot disease early, and when to harvest each region for best oil quality. Daphne taught me their business records, which included handwritten ledgers and basic computer spreadsheets their grandson had set up during a holiday visit years earlier. She tracked income and expenses in a useful but archaic way. I spent hours improving their systems to simplify inventory and sales monitoring. "Look," I showed Daphne one night how to filter the spreadsheet to reveal which oils sold best at which marketplaces. Her eyes expanded as numbers revealed patterns. "Smart," she nodded. "Boston lady brain good for business." With their permission, I made minor marketing changes. I learned about flavor profiles and meal pairings from Daphne's many culinary classes and updated our hand-labeled bottles. I answered tourists' questions at our market stand with a simple pamphlet on their traditional practices. I made connections outside Daphne and Giannis' circle as my Greek improved. The pharmacist who prescribed Daphne's blood pressure medicine stopped by our market booth for non-business chats. The baker's wife invited me to her monthly coffee with village women, a daunting yet valuable immersion in local language and customs. When the taverna started serving our premium oil and placing small cards with our new labels on each table, Michalis became an unexpected ally. "Good for you, good for me." He winked when I thanked him. 2 nearby eateries contacted us about providing after hearing about us. I attended my first village ceremony, the butcher's granddaughter's christening, 6 months into my new existence. From the rear of the modest church, I watched the community ritual with a lump in my throat. The elderly priest recognized me and greeted me afterward, stopping his Athens seminary English. "You bring new life to Old Grove," he murmured, his rheumy eyes gleaming. "Good for village. Young people leave for Athens, for America. Village needs new blood." His acceptance seemed to eliminate the last obstacle. After that, name day celebrations, beach parties, and village committee meetings concerning the summer festival were more frequent. Each incident added to my web of connections. Zoe, the weaver next to our weekly market stall, became a friend. Young widow, she had a sharp wit and pragmatic approach like my college friend. Our chats in my increasing Greek and her superb English covered business plans, village gossip, and personal observations. You never speak of America," she said quietly as we packed away our unsold products. Family there? Friends? Question stung me abruptly. I'd forgotten my former life since I was so concentrated on my new one. My parents died years ago. A few friends, but... I paused, recognizing Ethan had steadily removed me from my support network by continuously finding reasons why my college pals were difficult or work colleagues used me. Zoe nodded knowingly. The husband who left you in Italy? You never say his name. Ethan, I began, the word strange after months of stillness. His name is Ethan. Her honesty was refreshing after months of Daphne and Ianna's subtle evasion. I don't know, I said. I haven't checked. My phone, I waved unclearly. I had turned it on sometimes to shoot shots but had abandoned my American email and social networks, afraid of what may be there. Zoe arched her eyebrow. Perhaps time to look. Not for him. For you. To close the door properly. I remembered her words. After helping Daphne cook dinner, I charged my ancient phone and connected to the farmhouse's basic Wi-Fi in my room. I signed into my neglected email account with shaky fingers. The screen showed hundreds of unread messages. Several former pals sent me messages ranging from casual check-ins to serious queries. I felt shame as I withdrew from their lives without explanation, just as I had from Ethan's. I noticed a post from my former design mentor. Job opportunity, followed by urgent follow-ups. Opening it revealed she recommended me for a remote consulting employment with a sustainable building materials company. The final email, 2 weeks ago, said the post was still open if I was interested. Ethan Davis email with the subject line, I know where you are. Froze my fingers before I could examine this unexpected bridge to my former existence. It arrived hours earlier, according to the timestamp. I opened it, heart racing. Claire, it's taken months and a private investigator, but I finally tracked you to that backwater in Greece. This has gone on long enough. I'm coming to bring you home and end this ridiculous tantrum. My flight lands in Athens on Thursday. Be ready. 3 days from now. The room whirled as panic and wrath crashed in my chest. How dare he? After months without speaking, he expected to find me like lost luggage. As I stumbled downstairs, I held my phone. Daphne looked up from the account ledger on the kitchen table, her smile dimming as she saw my reaction. Bad news from America, she whispered. Ethan, I did. He's coming here. Thursday. Daphne narrowed her gaze. She slipped an envelope across the table toward me from under the ledger. Good timing then? Was waiting for right moment. Greek-English legal documents carrying my name and Daphne and Giannis were inside. Partnership agreement, Daphne said. 1/3 business yours now, not future now. I stared at the document, tears in my eyes, recognizing its meaning. Genuine collaboration, not simply job or apprenticeship. Room to stay, basis to build on. Not charity, but honor. You choose what happens Thursday, Daphne replied firmly, striking the papers. You have home here, business here, friends here. She pointed at my phone. That man, he no longer decides. Her words enveloped me in assurance. I felt anchored for the first time since being abandoned in that Italian town. Ethan arrived to find a drastically different woman than the one he left. The ensuing days were a whirlwind of preparation, not Ethan's style. No bags or tears, only emotional fortification. Sophia, the village's only lawyer, helped me write Greek and English divorce documents. I tentatively accepted remote consultation from my former design mentor. I even emailed friends I left behind, explaining briefly without regrets. On Thursday, the Greek summer sky was clear and bright. Giannis and I were evaluating olive oil samples in the processing shed when a rental car engine started up in the afternoon. Daphne stood at the threshold, worried yet determined. He is here, she said. Heart racing, I wiped my hands on my work apron and left. Ethan stood outside a silver automobile with fashionable sunglasses on his nicely coiffed hair, disliking the rustic cottage. I knew his casual but costly travel suit from previous business trips. Tailored chinos and a button-down that probably cost more than a week's olive oil profit. He initially ignored me, allowing me precious seconds to calm down. The ancient olive trees and aged stone buildings of my birthplace made this man who had once been my world seem smaller. Ethan, I called, calmly to my surprise. His bewilderment when he turned was nearly funny. He looked from my work boots to my sun-browned arms, then at my scrunchy tied hair. I watched his face struggle with recognition and incredulity. My God, Claire, what happened to you? The familiar, critical tone that formerly would have sent me racing to rectify whatever he found missing now flowed over me like a wave. Life happened, I said, approaching him slowly. What are you doing here, Ethan? His charm slipped into place as he removed his sunglasses and extended his arms. I've come to take you home, of course. This has gone on long enough, don't you think? Whatever point you were trying to make. This isn't about making a point, I said, halting far away. This is about making a life. His smile sank. I heard Daphne and Yanis leaving the home quietly behind me. While they couldn't understand us, they hid in plain sight, ready to act. Ethan hardened as he saw them. Are these the people you've been staying with? Have they been holding you here? Because if so, I interrupted. They've been teaching me. About olive farming, about community, about kindness without conditions. I pointed to the woods. I'm part owner now. I have a business here. He looked incredulous, then condescending, as I knew. A business, Claire? Be serious. You're a designer, not a farmer. This is what, some eat, pray, love phase after our fight? I admit I shouldn't have left you in Italy. It was a stupid, drunken mistake. I've apologized. Now it's time to come home. You've apologized. When? In what universe does tracking me down and demanding I return count as an apology? The charm vanished as his jaw tightened. Fine, I'm sorry I left you in Italy. It was immature and wrong. Is that what you want to hear? Can we move past this now? Why did you even look for me, Ethan? It's been months. Why now? He shuffled uncomfortable, seeing the old couple observing us carefully. Can we discuss this privately? In the car, perhaps. They don't speak English, and I have nothing to hide from them. Why now? His shoulders sagged. Your parents have been calling. Friends asking questions at events. Clients wondering why you're not at the house when they visit. It looks, he said. Bad for your image, I said. It damaged your reputation? Our reputation, he retorted. Our life together. The one we built over 10 years of marriage. The one you built, I said. The one where I gradually became nothing more than an accessory to your success. Tell me, Ethan, did you even notice how unhappy I was before Italy? Did you care? His expression grew darker. We had a good life, Claire. A beautiful home, financial security, respect in the community. What more could you possibly want? I found purpose, connection, and agency over my own choices here, in a place you dismiss as primitive and backward. I pointed to the modest stone home behind me. He protested, this isn't you, sounding desperate. The Claire I know wouldn't choose manual labor and poverty over comfort and position. I grinned, understanding his statement's core truth. You're right. The Claire you knew wouldn't have. But that woman died in Italy when her husband abandoned her as a joke. The woman standing before you made different choices. Daphne came over and pressed our partnership agreement into my palm. She recognized the occasion even though she couldn't follow our words. The document was unfolded and held to Ethan. I have legal ties here now. A business partnership. Responsibilities to people who value me for my contributions, not my appearance or social connections. Face flushed with rage. This is ridiculous. Whatever game you're playing? It's not a game, I answered, taking Sophia's envelope from my pocket. These are divorce papers, Ethan. Already filed, with provisions for division of assets. He studied the package as if it may burn him. You can't be serious. You'd throw away everything for this? He mocked the small property. I'm not throwing away anything. I'm choosing something better, something real. I approached and placed the envelope in his hard hand. You left me, Ethan. You drove away laughing. You just never expected I'd find my way without you. His fingers immediately wrapped around the documents, his expression alternating between amazement, wrath, and wounded pride. You'll regret this, he muttered, but even he thought the threat was empty. When the novelty wears off and you're still hauling olives in the hot sun at 60, you'll remember what you gave up. Maybe, I said. But I'd rather risk regret from choices I made than live with the certainty of regret from choices made for me. Yanis went closer and placed a worn hand on my shoulder. Despite not understanding our conversation, he saw the conclusion in our body language. He spoke Greek to Ethan in a stern but loving manner. What did he say? Ethan inquired, lowering his voice. He said the road back to Athens is dangerous after dark. You should leave now to reach the city before nightfall. Ethan looked between us and realized this wasn't a negotiation or rescue. Adieu. He returned to his rented car with the divorce papers without saying a word. Daphne put her hand in mine as the car drove off the dirt road. The three of us turned toward my residence. Tonight's tasks, cataloging oil samples, cooking dinner, and checking tomorrow's market inventory. My spouse left me in a strange nation, thinking I'd be powerless and return after learning my lesson. Instead, I discovered fertile footing to grow stronger and deeper roots than he expected. The cruelest actions can bring the greatest blessings. Ethan accidentally freed me while trying to break me. On Christmas, I handed my parents a copy of the will they had hidden from me after quietly erasing me from the family photo and their lives. I gave my parents an envelope the next day and warned, "Don't open it here." They did. Mother cried. Dad paled. I wish I could say it startled me. I wish I could say it was shocking like a movie ending. However, it felt oddly anticipated. After brushing snow off my boots, I looked up in my parents' living room and saw the portrait. Large, shiny, properly framed, hanging proudly over the fireplace like our family's crown gem. Everyone participated. Mom, in her beloved red jacket, beaming like she hadn't spent decades sighing at everything but Olivia. Dad with that weird grin he only uses for pictures and golf course selfies. Olivia, of course, front and center, wearing a beige turtleneck that probably cost more than my rent and posing candidly like she's laughing at something sweet, maybe a trust fund joke. Then I was gone. Not even pushed aside. No background blur, just gone. The crop was fine. It was purposeful and clean. I felt like I'd been seamlessly removed from their life. No marks, no roughness, just removed. I stared at it for 4 or 5 seconds, long enough to knot my stomach but not noticeable. Maybe they noticed but didn't care. Mom called from the kitchen, dinner's almost ready, like we were one happy family. Her roast smelled like rosemary and lemon. Holiday scents. Comfort scents. I loved those smells when they mattered. I entered the kitchen after hanging up my coat and saying hello. Olivia swirled wine in a glass like she was hosting a seasonal pairings program. She kissed my cheek with her air kiss, just close enough to register but distant enough to avoid touching me. She responded, "You made it," like this was her house and I was late to an event. I smiled, the type you give after screaming into a pillow 3 times this month, and concluded it wasn't worth wasting your voice. The customary dinner performance. Dad cut the roast like a Hallmark commercial audition. Mom praised Olivia's skincare twice. No one inquired about my health. Nobody asked me what I was doing or where I lived. The only inquiry I got was if I still drove that little car, which means, we have no idea what's going on in your life, and we're hoping you'll fill in the blanks so we can pretend we care. I left gaps. A classic gold watch from Mom and Dad was what Olivia opened instead. "Nothing fancy," Mom said, which is funny because I caught the number on the receipt folded under the tissue paper. I'd have to work a week and a half to afford it, assuming I skipped groceries. "Oh my God. You guys," Olivia beams. "This is just, wow. Thought you'd like it," Dad responded, beaming like he'd landed a merger. I got a mug with somebody's favorite daughter, which was probably ironic. Was it? Not sure. I excused myself after dessert, exhausted. Mom offered me her guest room. No, my room, no, your old room, just, the guest room. Beige blankets, dusty bookcase, one fuming lamp. I closed the door, turned on the lamp, which flickered on time, and sat on the bed. I took out the envelope. It was in my bag the whole time. Heavy ivory paper, embossed seal. I considered handing it to them in the morning, after the stockings, cinnamon buns, and performance. But standing in that living room, gazing at that photo, witnessing my entire life erased like a family algorithm error. Indeed, I changed my mind. They deleted me, not forgot me. Carefully, strategically. Maybe I was a lousy brand partner. Turning the envelope in my hands. Felt heavy? I slept in that night and let the home settle. Same creaky floors. Same hall wall clock ticking. Dad snored. Mom said something about bringing the excellent plates tomorrow. Olivia laughed routinely and breathlessly. The Golden Child soundtrack. Closed my eyes, I contemplated the years. When I got into my ideal institution, they remarked, "We're so proud," then asked if I might defer a year to help Olivia with her portfolio. When I missed rent and called home, Dad stated, "Things are tight right now," while organizing Olivia's birthday cruise. My boyfriend's name was forgotten at supper. He never returned. I didn't blame him. I was tired of blaming my sensitivity and miscommunication. I quit making excuses that night in a strange bed. I would deliver the envelope tomorrow. I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't cry. My voice was silent. I'd smile, say, "Merry Christmas," and let the truth do what years of silence couldn't. The scent of coffee and cinnamon rolls and Olivia's voice talking about suitcase weight constraints and travel anxieties roused me up. Ironic, as she didn't pay for her travel, luggage, suitcase, or shoes that cost more than my monthly rent. Devastating thing. A prayer. I stayed in the guest room longer than required since I wasn't ready to return to my family's Christmas sitcom set. I could envision the phony laughter, overblown excitement, and someone, probably Mom, saying, "Isn't it nice having everyone together?" As if everyone included me. As if I hadn't spent the last decade as a fuzzy background character in every family memory. Mom was plating scrambled eggs like she was auditioning for a lifestyle magazine brunch spread when I entered the kitchen. Dad browsed his phone at the table. Olivia drank almond milk from a wine glass barefoot. Mother said, "Good morning," without looking up. "Hope you slept okay in the guest room." "The mattress has a personality," I said, "Making coffee?" She laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. Performing through breakfast was our usual routine. No catching up. No one asked about my employment, how I was doing, or if I was still living in that small apartment with the squeaky stairs. I wasn't. Olivia discussed her planned trip to Barcelona and how lucky her parents were to support her goals. I nodded like a seat filler at an awards event without speaking. They didn't detect the envelope in my coat pocket. It would follow. Instead, I thought about everything that led up to this point. When I graduated high school, I received a partial scholarship that allowed me to work part-time. I recall sitting at the kitchen table with documents spread out and begging for a little help. Mom looked at me like I wanted to pawn her wedding ring. Dad mentioned tough timing, and we're still catching up from the bathroom remodel, which included Bluetooth-enabled bathtubs and heated floors. Olivia got a new automobile for her 18th birthday 2 months later. White leather seats, custom stereo, bow on top. She said they were the nicest parents ever and cried when they gave her the keys. I stood next to the recycling bin with a $20 bill and a "You're going places" graduation card. You know what? I departed for college. Took 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, ate too much instant ramen, graduated with honors, relocated to a new city, started anew. I never asked for anything else, and they didn't offer. I didn't call after being laid off 2 years ago. I didn't ask for help paying for my doctor's medicine when I was sick. I didn't ask when my flat flooded and I lost most of my furniture. I made do with a Craigslist old mattress. Olivia shared sponsored Instagram stories from Santorini. Sometimes I wondered if it was me. Maybe I was tougher to love, more guarded, less shiny. Maybe I should have joined a sorority, smiled more, and worn beige. If I'd played piano instead of diner shifts, people might have noticed me. They may have discovered I needed help if I hadn't made things so easy, always independent, always fine. But then I remembered my 8th birthday. I invited 6 kids and cooked cupcakes. Mom forgot to pick up pizza, so we ate saltine cheese slices. The event ended early since Olivia had a dance recital the next day. They said, "We'll make it up to you next year." Never did. Or my state science competition win. The school called home to inform them. "Nice job," was their final text. No supper, no frame plaque, no mention again. Olivia got a little role in a shampoo commercial, so they hosted a party with balloons and a future star. Cake. So, no, not me, never me. The change occurred earlier this year, not really looking for it. A local records office was where I went for unrelated address evidence for a job application. Administrative stuff. I saw a document with my name on it tied to an unfamiliar property address. I initially believed it was a typo or a similar name. Curiosity always spirals. I investigated. Several well-written emails, requests, and searches. The deeper I went, the tangles increased. There were unspoken, buried things. I'm the center. Not immediately, I didn't confront anyone. As usual, I watched and observed. Now I wasn't helpless. I had paper evidence. The more I discovered, the more tranquil I felt, like I'd been underwater my whole life and didn't realize it until I came up for air. They exploited me, not forgotten me. My name, rights, quiet. I had something to make them listen. The morning after breakfast, I changed upstairs. I took time. Allow them to congregate around the tree, exchange gifts, and enjoy their festive glow. They were partly unwrapped when I arrived. Olivia opened something pricey and pretended to be astonished. Mom had that misty gaze she saves for sharing. "You get any sleep?" Dad said. I grinned. "Enough." He nodded and watched Olivia admire her fancy tote. I sat silently, took the letter from my coat pocket, and placed it on the table with the coffee mugs and crumpled wrapping paper. No one noticed. Not yet. They would. Everyone notices eventually. Too late. They saw the envelope 10 minutes later. Mom noticed because God forbid anything sit on her reclaimed wood table without coasters, ceremony, or purpose. It seemed like a misdelivered bill or wedding invitation to her. "What's this?" she asked the room, not me. I took another drink of coffee and said, That's from me. Dad looked over from where he was tearing up wrapping paper, perhaps hoping something had fallen beneath the tree. You didn't have to get us anything, he replied, beaming like I gave them a stupid phrase mug. I know, I answered. I wanted to. That caught their attention. Mom sat down, turning the envelope. Should we open it now? I shrugged. But I'd rather you didn't. Obviously, they opened it. Father glanced over her shoulder as she broke seal. For a moment, it was just paper slipping free and pages crinkling. Olivia carefully folded the handles of her new designer purse like a newborn named after a French city. Silence broke up. Thickened. No need to glance up, I could feel it. Something between realization and nausea, like realizing your coffee's milk is sour after swallowing. Dad exhaled with his nose. Mom was skimming quicker now, flipping to the second and third pages like she could outpace her reading. Olivia gazed. What is it? They remained silent. She tried again, louder. What's going on? Still nothing. That was my signal. I figured it was time you knew. I stood slowly. Merry Christmas. Mom eventually inquired, what is this? Her voice was calm, not furious or confused. That, I add, is a copy of Grandpa Arthur's will. She blinks. I've seen his will. We handled the estate. No, I answered. You handled what you told me was the estate. You never showed me the full will, just said he left a few keepsakes and some cash that went toward funeral expenses. Staring at me, he blinks too much. That version didn't mention the rental property in Old Briar, I said. Probably because you were already collecting rent from it by then. Dad dropped the papers on the table like they burnt him. Where did you get this? Oh, you know, I said. Public records, title searches, tax filings, archived emails, a couple phone calls, a very patient lawyer. Olivia finally stood. Wait, what rental property? The one by the park? I asked her. The one you used for that photo shoot last year? Yeah, that one. She opened her mouth but said nothing. Mom started speaking again. Sweetheart, this isn't what it looks like. I grinned. That's funny, because it looks like you used my name, my inheritance, and my legal rights to fund your lifestyle while telling me there was nothing left for me. It wasn't like that, she rushed. It was complicated. It wasn't, I said. The will is extremely clear. The house was left to me, sole beneficiary, full title transferred, which means all that rent you've been collecting? Technically stolen? And the renovations? Unauthorized. Dad scratched his temples like this conversation was causing a headache. I hoped so. I knew you wouldn't understand, he murmured. You're always so dramatic. It made me giggle. Right, I'm dramatic. You edited me out of a family portrait and committed inheritance fraud, but sure, let's blame my tone. Olivia was perplexed, as if someone had pulled the rug out from under her and she hadn't fallen. But that house paid for my tuition. I know, I answered. And the car, and the Mexico trip, and probably a few handbags along the way. Her words were, that's not fair. You didn't need it, you were always the independent one, you never asked for help. Because I was told there was nothing to ask for, I add. You made sure of that. Mom's voice became gentle and delicate, like when she returned something at a boutique without a receipt. We didn't think you'd want the responsibility. You were busy. You were always so far away. I was far away, I add, because you made it very clear I wasn't welcome here. Chair pushed back, Dad. You need to calm down. And you, I continued, facing him, need a lawyer. He froze. I'm not suing, I said. Yet. But I've officially reclaimed ownership of the property. The tenants have been notified. Rent payments will now go to me. Your access to the house is revoked. Mom looked tearful. But that house was our income. We depended on that? Tilted my head. Then maybe you shouldn't have stolen it. We're family, she muttered. No, I answered. You're people I used to be related to. There's a difference. Olivia crossed arms. You think this makes you better than us? No, I answered. Just not beneath you anymore. The silence wasn't peaceful. Loaded, dense quiet made your ears ring. No one moved. No one breathed. Dad regarded the envelope as if it may explode. Mom's face relaxed. Olivia looked like she needed a pinch to wake up. I grabbed my coat. Wait, Mom stood. Can't we at least talk about this? You just did, I said. For years. Every time you made a decision without me. Every time you left me out. Every time you told me I'd understand someday. Dad clenched his jaw. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. Standing at the entrance, I looked at them one last time. I think that's the first thing we've agreed on. Then I left. The air was keen, cold, and clean. It hit my lungs like a reminder that I was alive and standing. I got behind the wheel, started the engine, and drove. I didn't weep, didn't smile, just breathed. Sometimes the strongest statement is silence. Walking away is sometimes the loudest shout. 3 weeks elapsed before the first message arrived. Mom's short, polite, polished message seemed like she'd rewritten it 5 times and wasn't sure it would work. Hi sweetheart, we've been talking and we think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we chat sometime this week? Hope you're well. Love you. No punctuation, just love you in the wrong place. I remained silent. Another 2 days later. Please don't let this one thing ruin everything. Olivia is very upset. Dad's trying to stay calm, but you know how he gets when he feels blindsided. Unless he commits fraud. Not after years of lying to his daughter. No, feels surprised. Poor guy. So I remained silent. Dad left a voicemail. I didn't listen. I erased the notification after staring at it. He last called me kiddo, when I volunteered to help him set up his retirement account, and he remarked, "Let's leave the money stuff to people who understand it." Right. Like him. Then followed the email. You really think this makes you the winner? Fine. Take the house. But don't come crying back when you realize money doesn't buy family. The next day, Mom and Dad are really stressed. They're talking about selling the condo. That's what you wanted? Congrats. That one I read twice, not because I felt horrible, but to understand how much my property loss was affecting the family finances. The house underpinned everything. Rent from 3 units paid for their home, vacations, Olivia's education, and even really good skincare. When I returned it, the machine stuttered. I hadn't even requested back rent. Not yet. In spring, mutual acquaintances whispered. A neighbor said Mom and Dad were refinancing their condo. Another said Dad had started consulting, which meant cold calling past clients to see if they owed him a favor. Mom worked weekends at a downtown store she used to buy at. She ordered yoga clothes for influencers, perhaps thinking it was temporary. Olivia, living at home again. City apartments were too pricey. Customers stopped. It was unclear if her art collaborative disbanded or imploded, and I didn't care. She raised $83 on her new creative chapter GoFundMe. $2 came from my ex-boyfriend. Why that detail made me laugh is beyond me. I repaired the house. My home. At first, it was dusty and neglected, but solid. I had a contractor touch up the paint and replace the windows. Most of my parents' furniture was donated. I kept one chair, a navy blue armchair I faintly recognized from childhood, the only one without strings. Kind tenants. After I cut their rent by $50, one of them wrote me a thank you message saying I was the first landlord who treated them like a human being. That meant more to me than my parents' rehashed apologies. It's funny what you notice when the noise stops. Though heavy and personal, the silence becomes peaceful, like space to stretch. I stopped checking my phone hourly. The next guilt trip no longer worried me. Sleeping through the night began. I got a note in my mailbox one afternoon. A genuine letter, not an email or text. Mom wrote the front. I waited a minute before opening it to remember the occasion, not because it was sincere. Her perfume permeated the envelope. The best part was, "You've always been so strong. We didn't realize you needed anything from us." That's what people say when they benefit from your silence and need an excuse for never asking why you stopped talking. She said, "We hope someday you'll come home. Maybe we can start over. Maybe we can be a family again." No restitution statement. The stolen wealth, deceit, and being cropped from the family portrait like a bad ex were ignored. The letter went in a drawer. Kept it. No response either. That was her final direct contact. I met my former neighbor at a bookstore 3 years later. I grinned and stated I was still handling the property. She paused before responding, "I hear Mom and Dad had a rough time of it." I remained silent. She nods. "Well, you look happy. That's good." And I was. I am. I live in the house. Not out of necessity or spite, but because it's quiet. I own it. Birds and sunlight replace footsteps outside my bedroom door and passive-aggressive comments about how I never call. Rebuilt backyard garden, repainted front steps. Windowsill plants thrive on sunlight and minimal expectations. I have a photo of me holding the keys in front of the house on my mantle. No one else visible, just me. This is my favorite shot because no one was cropped. I occasionally hear from them. One Christmas card simply, thinking of you. Hope you're well, no return address. I didn't reply. Interestingly, I'm no longer angry. I'm not seeking justice, closure, or an apology. My name, place in the world, and story are mine, which they never gave me. I thought if I worked hard and earned it, they'd love me like Olivia. Real love doesn't have to be earned, you freely give it. They gave me conditions. I gave me everything else. No, I don't miss them. I don't replay talks. I don't expect dramatic reunions. I don't imagine a flawless apology that fixes everything. As I fixed it, no bow or benediction came with my life. It came from walking away, doing the hard thing. It turned out I only needed that present. After finding 2 tampons and other clues, I uncovered a disturbing truth behind my husband's secret meetings. Original post: I, 29F, have been with my husband, 30M, for 7 years, married for 4. I've never had reason to suspect he was unfaithful to me or even remotely dissatisfied with our marriage. He likes to joke that we're still living the honeymoon phase nearly 5 years and 2 kids in. I wouldn't have questioned that, or him, were it not for a surprise I found in his car last month. When buckling our daughter into her car seat, I noticed something slotted between the cushions. I pulled it out and saw that it was a tampon. This wouldn't have been so unusual had I not had an IUD that has stopped my period for the past year, and I didn't even recognize the wrapper style. I brought it to my husband's attention, and he didn't seem to understand what it was, let alone why I was holding it, until I told him where I'd found it and why I was almost certain it wasn't mine. He shrugged and said it probably belonged to his coworker, Fiona. It's not uncommon for my husband to carpool to lunch with his coworkers, and we're both fairly close to Fiona and her husband, so I figured it was entirely possible the tampon had slipped out of her purse whenever he had driven with them or offered her a ride. No big deal. I put it out of my mind until we had dinner with Fiona and her husband a couple weeks later. I had sincerely wanted to believe my husband. I just couldn't get over the way it had been tucked in the seat and how my husband had seemed not to have any regard for it whatsoever. Maybe playing dumb. I don't know. I did something that I now feel kind of crazy for doing. I faked an emergency and asked Fiona if she had any tampons while we were out together. She handed me one almost identical to the tampon I'd found in our back seat, and I breathed a sigh of relief. So the tampon there was probably the same tampon here, and in all likelihood, there was an innocent explanation as to why it had been left in the back seat in the first place. I thought I'd seen the last of the out-of-place feminine hygiene products until I found another tampon this morning. This time in my sock drawer. I feel physically ill at the thought of my husband having an affair and even more nauseated at the thought that the woman might have left these tampons out for me to find. If it was my husband's coworker, why would she give herself away by offering me one the other night? In any other situation I would want to talk to my husband about this, but I feel too sick and embarrassed to approach him with what I've found. What should I do? Relevant comments. I've had a period of 30 years and never put a tampon in a sock drawer. Trust your gut and get cameras. Neither have I. I've considered so many explanations for the tampons that wouldn't implicate my husband, but none of them make sense really. I'm terrified to set up a camera if it means confirming what I suspect right now. Has Fiona been over to your house and had time to plant the tampon? She's been to our house many times and vice versa. To my knowledge, she wasn't over any time in the past week, so if she planted that second tampon, she had to have found a window of time when I wasn't home. Any time she and her husband visit, we all stay downstairs, and you'd have to go really out of your way to make it to our bedroom, that is around our dogs, over the safety gate, past the other bedrooms. Not saying it's impossible, but definitely tricky to do on a quick bathroom break, I would guess. How old are your kids? Could they have found a tampon and put it in a random place? 2 and almost 4. Both have a mischievous streak, so I didn't want to rule out the possibility of one of them moving stuff around, but I can't imagine how they'd get their hands on one, possibly 2 random tampons that I never bought. Update post. Contemplating every possible source of 2 tampons has been my personal hell for the past few weeks, but I wanted to share an update. Shortly after posting here, I told my sister what happened. The tampon in the back seat and the sock drawer, my husband's cluelessness, the tampon from Fiona, and all the things I suspected but didn't want to believe. We compared tampons, save for the back seat one I had already discarded. And they were a match, just in different absorbances. I hadn't left either in a place where my husband or daughters would have found them and moved them around. My daughters didn't know what they were or where they had come from. My sister was convinced it was Fiona, Either fucking my husband, fucking with me, or both. Direct confrontation of either party still seemed like a bad idea, so she suggested inviting Fiona and her husband over for our Labor Day barbecue. Unfortunately, they already had plans. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. Watching my husband for any changed behavior, there was none. Our house for any misplaced foreign items, there were none. And even the girls for any new friends they might have met. My sister's husband was adamant on this last point, and partly why he was inclined to believe that the tampons were harmless. If anything had been happening in or around our home, he said, it would be nearly impossible to keep it from me and the girls, since my husband was the one taking them to and from daycare and most other activities during the week. I felt a good bit of consolation in that. It wasn't until my younger daughter, 2yo, came down with something last week that I felt any differently. I wanted to be the one home taking care of her, but my husband insisted that I stay at work while he stayed home with her. I was okay with that. My sister and her husband figured it was a good sign that he would take the time off at a moment's notice, and at that point, we were all already beginning to put the tampon fiasco behind us. By the third or fourth day, I was just happy to see a near-healthy child and a husband who was helping see her through it. Toward the end of that week though, I came home to something strange. The toddler that I'd left that morning in an old PJ set was now dressed in a onesie I'd never seen before, with a tiny clip in her hair. I can't say I have the sharpest memory, but I have a pretty good sense of what my kids wear on a day-to-day basis, and particularly what kinds of clothes they wear. I'd sworn off the full-length sleep suits with snaps across the front long before we'd ever had our second. The long snaps are just a pain in the ass and a no-go for efficient diaper changes, IMO. It's just not something I would dress her in, and my husband knows as much. He doesn't plan for, or buy the girls' clothes, and he certainly doesn't accessorize them, so I was bewildered. And kind of floored at the thought of someone around our sick child without my knowledge. I didn't think twice, and I went straight to my husband to ask if anyone had been over to see him or the girls. He seemed confused, like before, and asked me why I would think that. It had just been him and the kids all day. I asked him again, if someone had so much as stopped by to say hello, and he denied it. He told me to calm down. I might have lashed out and come forward with the accusations right then and there, but our older daughter was in the room, and she sensed something was up. In a calmer voice, I asked him a third time if anyone had been around our children, and my husband swore that the girls hadn't been around anyone but him. He also denied buying new clothes or doing anyone's hair. With our daughter in the room and my emotions all over the place, I decided to leave it. I couldn't make sense of it then, and it hardly seems clearer now, after I've driven myself half crazy with explanations that aren't adding up. Relevant comments. To answer a couple questions. My 2yo can only string together a couple words at a time, and when I ask her about her time with daddy or her clothes bow, she answers based on the cues I give her, for example, who gave you that pretty bow? And she repeats pretty bow back to me, or mama daddy, over and over. My older daughter, almost 4, was at daycare that morning, and she can't recall anything different from that day. Doesn't remember the PJ change or the hair clip, so my guess is she was changed sometime that morning, but I'm not totally sure. I have a 45 minutes commute to work, so stopping by for lunch isn't really feasible. My sister has been kind enough to leave work and drive past a few times here and there, and she hasn't seen anything out of the ordinary. We have a Ring camera at the front door, and I've got the app on my phone with notifs on. Nothing there yet. If anyone has recommendations for more discreet surveillance, I'd be open to it. I'm just the least tech-savvy person and worry another camera will be easy to detect. LOL edit. And yes, we get our carbon monoxide detectors tested regularly. Is it possible one of the hair clips came from daycare? I could see the hair clip being a possibility, but less likely on the onesie. My younger daughter hadn't been to daycare in days, and if either of them had returned with something like that before I would have noticed, especially since it was the kind of onesie I hate with a passion. LOL. People comment that they can't wait to find out the ending to this saga. My money's on the Hollywood horror ending. Hopefully dreamed up the dogs too so I can finally stop picking up their imaginary shits and whatnot. Final update post. After nearly losing my mind over a hair clip and a onesie, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere with the accusations and half-baked guesswork. I'd gotten so absorbed in the paranoia and misery of my situation that I wasn't sleeping, eating or caring for my kids the way I should have been. And I wasn't getting any answers. So I decided to pull the trigger on the hidden cameras and have them shipped to my sister's house, with my BL agreeing to help with the install setup over at mine. Before the cameras were ever delivered though, I got my long-awaited confirmation last week. A ring notification had alerted me to motion at the front door while I was at work. Half expecting to see a delivery person, pet or lawn care salesman for the 15th time, you can imagine my surprise when I saw a clip of a young woman leading my daughter into the house hand in hand, with my husband and other daughter close behind them. The girls were supposed to be in daycare and my husband was at work. The woman, as far as I knew, was living 2 states away with a court order keeping her there. I immediately called my husband to ask him what the fuck this woman was doing in our house. He didn't answer, so I texted it to him. Even in his stupidity, he probably realized he had messed up by going through the front door, knew I had gotten the ring notification, and wanted to delay the inevitable. By the 5th or 6th subsequent call though, he did pick up. The woman on the camera was my husband's sister. As I would come to find out later, she was the likely source of both tampons, the onesie, and the bow. She is also a registered sex offender and a recovering addict, who spent the better part of her adolescence and young adulthood coercing the silence of another one of my husband's family members after she had molested them. I hadn't seen or heard from her in years, and from the way my husband talked about her, I didn't expect I ever would. But here she was, in our house, with our children. Suffice to say I was livid. It wasn't an affair at all and still, somehow infinitely more disgusting knowing who it was and why all of this had been happening. Apparently my Sil, fresh off another stint in rehab, had wanted to reconnect and make amends with people she'd hurt, and my husband was high on that list. My husband didn't want me to know or, worse, try to keep her family, our children, away from her, so they'd been meeting in secret, often at our house when I was at work. They would enter through the garage, in my husband's car, so the ring camera at the front door wouldn't tip me off. She spent the night on a weekend I had been on a business trip and slept in our bed. She babysat our girls on a night my husband told me he had dropped them off at his parents'. She bought the girls clothes and dressed my youngest in the onesie and bow that my husband had promised in his life I had dressed her in myself. My husband swore this was all in my head. The tampons, the onesie, the bow, and all the rest. He was perfectly content to watch me agonize for weeks over a woman he insisted didn't exist. Shrugging off each progressively more unsettling discovery like it was news to him and telling me I was being irrational. He insinuated that I was experiencing postpartum depression, 2 years after I'd given birth. 4 years later, I told him that one of my biggest fears for motherhood was to suffer from PPD like my mother had with me, to not be fully present for our babies and be left with a world of guilt and regret as they grew older. He told me I wasn't sleeping enough, that I missed the girls too much, that I needed to take a step back and reevaluate the state of my mental health. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was my husband, and because no other version of events made sense. Now, after a month of this mindfuck, I have nothing to show for my trust but this pathetic situation. And a lot of anger. Fiancé proposes with a $38 Temu ring, now I'm wondering if I should marry him. Am I the asshole for wanting a better ring and questioning our future? Original post. My 27F fiancé, 29M, proposed to me a few weeks ago. It caught me completely by surprise, but we've been together for 3 years and things have been going great. So I was really excited and said yes. I really liked the ring when I first saw it and my friends and family all think it is stunning. It's an oval cut with diamonds across the band. I asked where he got it and he wouldn't tell me where, but that he got a great deal on it. I didn't think anything of it until yesterday when we were in bed and I asked him if it was diamond or moissanite mainly out of curiosity. I don't have a preference BTW. He said he didn't know and would have to look it up. When I glanced over at his phone, he was in the Temu app. I asked him if he got it from there and he didn't respond. So I asked again and he responded with something like, "Does it matter?" and left the room and ended up sleeping on the couch. I spent all night so confused. Today I decided to download the app and look up my ring and I found one that looks identical. I found the exact ring and it listed at $38. I am mad. He makes good money, $200K/YR, and I feel like he could have shelled out some money for a ring better than one on Temu. AITA for telling him I don't want it? OOP's comments. OOP's thoughts. Okay, I'm not mad that the diamonds are not real. But I worry about the quality of the ring because I imagine my engagement ring to at least be sturdy. It's fine for now, but I have a hard time believing it'll last longer than a year if it's $38 on Temu. Commenter. NTABC, that thing might turn your finger green. He's lucky you don't have a sensitivity to fake metals like some do. He makes good money but bought a $38 ring. Is he cheap with other things where this discount shopping isn't a new thing for him and he's just an all-around penny pincher? My first thought was, did he not spend the money because he doesn't want to expect this to last? OOP. Yeah, let me provide some more context. Really, he's never been overly frugal. I'm probably more frugal than he is. Neither of us are huge spenders, but we each make enough to not have to strictly budget or anything. We have our own accounts and split rent equally. I know he has at least $100K across his savings investment accounts. We go out for drinks a few times a week and we'll go to concerts together and whatnot frequently. We travel a few times a year and stay in basic accommodations. Like our DoorDash the other night was $40. My ring costs less than DoorDashing dinner. Commenter. You are NTA, but what we all really want to know is whether or not you would still marry him if he replaces the ring. OOP. The responses to this have made me even more confused. People saying it could be a loyalty test, that he doesn't want me to be able to sell it if we divorce, or that he doesn't plan to be with me for long. I have a pit in my stomach. I haven't considered breaking things off, but that was before I wrote this here. I was thinking maybe he was just not thinking or rushed getting the ring, or maybe he genuinely thought he was getting a great deal on a high-quality ring. I'm not sure at this point. I plan to confront him when he gets back from work in a couple hours. The ring itself. The response to this is just absolutely insane. Sorry, I'm having a hard time keeping up with responses. A few of y'all want to see the ring, so here it is if you want to look it up. I'm still waiting for him to get home. Seller, LVZ Gem. 1 CT moissanite ring, women's wedding band suitable for banquet party official occasion, holiday Valentine's Day proposal. Engagement wedding gift anniversary. Gift birthday gift with certificate. I guess it technically is moissanite? Update post. After reading responses from my first post on the AITA subreddit, it got taken down. I was freaking out a bit. He came home while I was FaceTiming a friend about this. I hung up with her and then talked to him for an hour or so. He apologized for sleeping on the couch and that he needed time to think. He doesn't see eye to eye with me on my concerns about the ring and says he did research and that it was highly rated. He says if the ring breaks he will replace it, but didn't say it'd be higher quality. I have people messaging me that the ring could be harmful to my health and that Temu has horrible standards for their jewelry and labor issues, so now I really don't want to wear it. He left and went to his brother's house. Usually I'd go with him, but things are just tense. AITA for telling him I still don't want it. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. Kind of tough, because had you not found out it was from Temu, would you be upset? OOP. TBH. If I hadn't found out it was from Temu, I probably wouldn't be upset. But when it inevitably breaks or tarnishes, the truth would come out. Now that I know, it has completely changed how I feel about the ring, even if it aesthetically doesn't look too bad. Commenter. Did this come as a shock, or is he normally cheap and thoughtless? OOP. He's not normally cheap or thoughtless. He's genuinely a great guy, which is making this harder to navigate. He started making me feel really guilty and materialistic today when we talked about this, and I can see his point of view, but I'm just confused. It feels like Temu is at the bottom of the barrel. I'd be happy with a cheap, decent quality ring from Etsy or anywhere else. I don't really care about the price itself, it's more about the quality and feeling like he doesn't really value me the way I thought he did. OOP addresses several commenters asking if he thinks she is a gold digger. This was her most comprehensive response. I want to clear up these gold digger rumors because this isn't only about the cost of the ring. I only mention these things for context, not because I feel he owes me something in return. When I met him, I was making just over $100K, and he was working part-time and doing an internship bringing in significantly less than me. He totaled his car early on in our relationship, and I happily drove him to his work every morning on the way to my work when he didn't have a car. When his mom got sick and went on hospice, I immediately canceled all of my travel plans and holiday plans with my family and sat with him visiting her every day for months. I helped with funeral arrangements. I helped plan his brother's wedding. I even loaned him money for a new car once he started his new job. He did pay me back BTW. He moved in with me recently, and most everything in the home is mine that I paid for prior to the relationship, furniture, etc. I have paid for so many plane tickets for our travels, concert tickets, etc. that I've never asked him to pay back and never will. That's what a relationship is. I genuinely care for him. He has done similar gestures for me and is more than willing to spend money on dates. Believe it or not, I'm not this greedy woman sitting here excited to get his money. I have my own. Have they ever been ring shopping? We never went ring shopping. The proposal was a surprise to me. We'd casually discussed getting married in the future for the past year or so, but he never asked about my taste in rings, so I was kinda thinking that it happened before the engagement. I actually like the style of the ring, but now that I know it's from Temu, I can't look at it the same way. Mini update. I'm literally just sitting here refreshing your comments trying to figure out what to do next. He texted to let me know the plans of staying at his brother's for the weekend and is taking Friday off. It's not crazy abnormal since he's been watching football over there, but I feel like he's avoiding me now. I'm trying not to be pushy about the situation and I'll give him some space, but now I'm just in my head about all of it and regretting my initial reaction. It's just a dumb ring and maybe I've read into it too much. The only other time we've had an argument like this, it was resolved within a couple hours, so I'm not used to this behavior from him. Update 2. Update. He came home this morning while I was in a WFH meeting. These comments made my head spin all night. I got like 3 hours of sleep, so I admit I may be in the wrong for bringing up his finances, but I did. The gold digger rumors. When we met I was making more than him and often paying for his things. His high-paying job is a recent development. I have my own money and don't need it. I asked him what was going on, if there was anything he needed to tell me, if he was testing me by doing this. Well, that really set him off. What kind of person do you think I am? You think I'm a cheapskate, a liar? You obviously think really poorly of me. But still he never gave me a reason. So I asked why he was deflecting every question to victimize himself and to avoid my questions. He tried to leave again. So I tried de-escalating and told him I see where he's coming from, but I need to know if he still loves me. He was immediately apologetic and still wants to get married. He said I can just pick my ring out and buy it with my own money. He said he's sick of talking about this and it's water under the bridge now. He's acting like his normal self again since this convo. I hear him out there skipping around and humming to himself all happily and it's actually pissing me off. Maybe I'm being dramatic, but I don't think I can handle a marriage with someone like this. Am I the asshole for divorcing my wife after she thought I was lying about being raped as a child? As context, I was repeatedly raped by my brother's babysitter when I was around 9. She would grope me, force me to remove my pants and then either stick my dick in her mouth or try and give me a handjob whenever my 4-year-old brother slept. Most of the time I was paralyzed and couldn't do anything to stop it. She would always buy me sweets or video games for my DS as a reward. So in a weird way I started growing attached to her and would try and seek the abuse if it meant getting her rewards. I knew whatever she was doing was wrong, but she would always threaten to take my life if I ever told my parents, so I never did while the abuse was actively happening. Everything stopped as soon as she graduated college and moved states. I only realized how fucked up the things she did to me were when I was around 14-15 and understood the concept of consent. When I tried to open up to my parents, strict Catholics, it never ended well. First, they blamed it on porn and claimed it corrupted my mind into imagining these things happening to me. If I claimed I was telling the truth, my dad would beat the shit out of me and my mom would ground me. I tried opening up to my friends, but their reactions weren't any better. My male friends just called me lucky and asked if the BJ was good. My female friends claimed I was just lying to get attention and laughed in my face. I learned to just try and forget the past and vowed to myself that I would never mention this to anyone again. Now on to last week. My wife had heard some good things about this show called Baby Reindeer on Netflix from our friends. Going into it I knew it revolved around sexual abuse and stalking. In my mind I thought I was over the past, and I could handle watching the show no problem. Big fucking mistake. At the end of episode 4 I was literally on the verge of tears and I felt all the supposedly forgotten memories come flooding back. At the end of the next episode I couldn't hold it in anymore. My wife paused the show and just stared at me. After a while I did finally manage to calm down a bit. She asked me why I was crying and I just let everything out. She said she was sorry, hugged me and we went to bed soon after. I apologized to her the following morning for ruining our night. From the moment I let her know about the abuse I felt something change in our relationship. No more kisses when I came back from work and no more initiating anything intimate from her side. She wasn't mean or anything, but I felt like something was bothering her. I tried to apologize for maybe making her uncomfortable, but she would just claim there was nothing bothering her and I was just being paranoid. Yesterday me and my wife got into a pretty heated argument about her lying about taking out the trash, but during the argument she said something that floored me beyond belief. She literally said, "At least I'm not lying about being raped, you fucking narcissist." I literally couldn't process whatever just came out of her mouth. She tried apologizing right after saying that, but I just packed a few clothes and left to stay at my friend's house. She tried calling me several times since, but I haven't bothered picking up and have blocked her for time being. I know I might have trauma dumped on her and I know women aren't into that, but I just want some sort of acknowledgement, support. I don't have anyone left to turn to with this, and that's why I'm posting here. I've had 2 therapists to date and both didn't seem to help much. My gut is telling me to divorce her, but she's genuinely the love of my life. Throwing away 6 years because of this one moment doesn't sit right with me, but IDK. WIBTA for divorcing her? Am I actually the asshole here? I would love to hear some of your guys' opinions on my situation, and if you've read this all the way through, thank you. Relevant comments. Danny Caps fan. My heart aches for you. Being sexually abused is bad enough, but that nobody believed you and either mocked you or punished you for telling what happened is horrific. And I was going to suggest therapy, but I looked at your post again and saw that it didn't do much for you. Maybe a rape crisis center will be able to recommend a therapist who has experience with victims of CSA. What your wife said is appalling. It seems you feel she doesn't love you since your revelation and isn't on your side. That's reason enough to want to leave her. NTA Gnome 5314, NTA. You did something brave by opening up and she threw it back in your face. I'm sorry that you've faced such rejection your whole life. Unfortunately, that is all too common for men who have been sexually assaulted. It's up to you to decide if you want her back, but either way is valid. OP. Thank you so much. I'm pretty sure this happens a lot to women as well. I went to a few anonymous meetings and heard a lot of the same from women who claim people just thought they were trying to get a settlement or something. Hot Cross Buns, 72, NTA. As a CSA survivor, the turning point for me in my marriage was when he told me to get over it, and it's been so long. We are now divorced. While it wasn't the sole reason I left, knowing that he wasn't a safe space for me anymore, if at all, was a driving force. So while I won't tell you to leave her, I will say you do need to speak with a professional regarding the assault and keep her at a distance while you work through your emotions. She can never take back what she said to you, and there needs to be consequences for that. Send PHX. And to add to the part about talking to a professional, OP, you mentioned the ones you've talked to haven't helped. I would keep trying and go to a different therapist until you find one with whom you mesh well. See if you can find one who has a focus on sexual abuse trauma, and even check if they have experience in this area with male clients. Unlucky_addendum. 3425, NTA also. I wouldn't call what you did trauma dumping. You opened up to your wife. You're supposed to support each other. I'm sure she was probably shocked, would explain some of her lack of empathy. But to call you a liar and a narcissist, no. You've spent enough time being invalidated by assholes. Deleted user, not only that. Weaponize the trauma of one of the worst things that could ever happen to someone to make OP feel small, guilty, betrayed, insecure, alone, invalid, then call them a narcissist and a liar. To retaliate for being called out not taking the bins out. It's monstrous. OP is right to consider that an instant relationship ends. Because fuck me, it's so many layers of evil. Imaginary Yak 6487, NTA. Therapy. I'm a CSA survivor. I'm a woman. I told my ex-husband about some of it after a trauma response to something he was attempting to do sexually. I wasn't comfortable and didn't think I could. He seemed to be understanding. One night after he had been drinking heavily, he tried to do this again and I said no. He said, "Why not? I'm not the one who RP'd you, so don't take your bullshit out on me by denying me." He assaulted me and did it anyway. Did y'all know that back in the late 80s there was no laws on the books about martial rape until 1993? BC, you couldn't rape your wife back then? He's an ex-husband for a reason. She needs to be an ex for a reason as well. I wish you the best. Leanna Shaw. I don't think you can call that trauma dumping. If she was some random girl you were on a first date with, yeah, sure. But she's your wife, and that's the sort of established relationship that should be a safe place for you to open up about past traumas. The fact that it ended up not being safe isn't your fault, and I'm so sorry that she responded to you the way she did. I understand feeling conflicted about divorce, because it is such a hard thing to go through, but you absolutely would not be wrong to do so. I wish you the best, whatever you decide to do. AITA does not have a consensus bot, but OOP was voted NTA in most comments. Most of the comments were supportive, giving advice and telling their stories. Some downvoted commenters advised OOP to never cry or open up in front of women. Update. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for all the amazing love and support. For the first time in my life I felt heard and didn't just feel like a burden to people. I don't know what I did to deserve any of this, but I just want to let you all know that I'm beyond grateful. As for the update. Shortly after posting, I decided to go back home. I had work the next day and didn't want to burden my friend with my marital issues any longer. Upon coming home I was met with her screaming at me for just leaving the apartment and ghosting her without having an adult conversation with her. I just let her know how hurt I was by the things she said to me and that I needed some time to myself to gather my thoughts. She tried arguing back with how there is nothing to think about and that I was being an immature crybaby. From that point onwards we have barely been on speaking terms. I know a lot of people are going to be mad hearing this, but the longer I thought about my marriage and my wife, the more I wanted to give her another chance. She wasn't perfect by any means, but neither was I. A lot of my past relationships ended as a result of my past catching up with me, but I really want to change it this time. She isn't the first partner friend to have this type of reaction to what I went through. I know it's tough, but I feel like I just needed to bite the bullet if it meant keeping my sanity. I didn't want to start over again. After we somewhat started talking to each other again, I sat her down for a serious conversation and let her know again how hurt I was by everything she said. I let her know about all the ridicule I suffered as a result of me opening up and her having the same reaction, just reopened unhealed wounds. She just kept quiet until I mentioned couples therapy. She then started crying, but not for the reason I thought. I tried holding her, but she just pushed me away and screamed that I seriously thought about ending our marriage over some silly argument we had and that I was just trying to make up some sob story after watching Baby Reindeer for attention and sympathy. According to her, all of this was just too convenient to be believable. If it was real, why didn't I mention any of this throughout the 6 years we have been together? At this point I even started tearing up. I apologized for keeping this from her for so long and then tried reassuring her that I in fact wasn't making this up, but she just slapped me and stormed off to bed. That was a week ago and I have been sleeping on the couch ever since. Whenever I try to speak to my wife, she just makes snarky comments towards me and just storms off. I just cry myself to sleep most nights and just wish I never fucking watched that show. None of this shit would have happened. I currently don't have the money for therapy and just feel lost. I don't want a divorce. I want to try and make this work, but this whole mess is just so draining. I'm not in contact with my family, so I don't have anyone I can turn to with this. How would you guys move forward in this situation? Relevant comments. Just Anthony. There is no saving this relationship. From the looks of it, you're going to end up miserable and ultimately stop telling her things to avoid arguments and/or belittling from her end. Be honest with yourself. What exactly are you looking for in marriage counseling? She'll need her own individual therapy before she can take on marriage counseling. It won't get anywhere if only one person acknowledges there's a problem. OP, I understand you've been with her for 6 years and she's by far the best you've had, but she isn't the best for you, let alone the one. Why compromise the rest of your life to her when you can get out and move on? Am I the asshole for divorcing my wife after she thought I was lying about being raped as a child? As context, I was repeatedly raped by my brother's babysitter when I was around 9. She would grope me, force me to remove my pants and then either stick my dick in her mouth or try and give me a handjob whenever my 4-year-old brother slept. Most of the time I was paralyzed and couldn't do anything to stop it. She would always buy me sweets or video games for my DS as a reward. So in a weird way I started growing attached to her and would try and seek the abuse if it meant getting her rewards. I knew whatever she was doing was wrong, but she would always threaten to take my life if I ever told my parents, so I never did while the abuse was actively happening. Everything stopped as soon as she graduated college and moved states. I only realized how fucked up the things she did to me were when I was around 14-15 and understood the concept of consent. When I tried to open up to my parents, strict Catholics, it never ended well. First, they blamed it on porn and claimed it corrupted my mind into imagining these things happening to me. If I claimed I was telling the truth, my dad would beat the shit out of me and my mom would ground me. I tried opening up to my friends, but their reactions weren't any better. My male friends just called me lucky and asked if the BJ was good. My female friends claimed I was just lying to get attention and laughed in my face. I learned to just try and forget the past and vowed to myself that I would never mention this to anyone again. Now on to last week. My wife had heard some good things about this show called Baby Reindeer on Netflix from our friends. Going into it I knew it revolved around sexual abuse and stalking. In my mind I thought I was over the past, and I could handle watching the show no problem. Big fucking mistake. At the end of episode 4 I was literally on the verge of tears and I felt all the supposedly forgotten memories come flooding back. At the end of the next episode I couldn't hold it in anymore. My wife paused the show and just stared at me. After a while I did finally manage to calm down a bit. She asked me why I was crying and I just let everything out. She said she was sorry, hugged me and we went to bed soon after. I apologized to her the following morning for ruining our night. From the moment I let her know about the abuse I felt something change in our relationship. No more kisses when I came back from work and no more initiating anything intimate from her side. She wasn't mean or anything but I felt like something was bothering her. I tried to apologize for maybe making her uncomfortable but she would just claim there was nothing bothering her and I was just being paranoid. Yesterday me and my wife got into a pretty heated argument about her lying about taking out the trash but during the argument she said something that floored me beyond belief. She literally said, "At least I'm not lying about being raped, you fucking narcissist." I literally couldn't process whatever just came out of her mouth. She tried apologizing right after saying that but I just packed a few clothes and left to stay at my friend's house. She tried calling me several times since but I haven't bothered picking up and have blocked her for time being. I know I might have trauma dumped on her and I know women aren't into that but I just want some sort of acknowledgement support. I don't have anyone left to turn to with this and that's why I'm posting here. I've had 2 therapists to date and both didn't seem to help much. My gut is telling me to divorce her but she's genuinely the love of my life. Throwing away 6 years because of this one moment doesn't sit right with me but IDK. WIBTA for divorcing her? Am I actually the asshole here? I would love to hear some of your guys' opinions on my situation and if you've read this all the way through thank you relevant comments. Danny Caps fan. My heart aches for you. Being sexually abused is bad enough, but that nobody believed you and either mocked you or punished you for telling what happened is horrific. And I was going to suggest therapy but I looked at your post again and saw that it didn't do much for you. Maybe a rape crisis center will be able to recommend a therapist who has experience with victims of CSA. What your wife said is appalling. It seems you feel she doesn't love you since your revelation and isn't on your side. That's reason enough to want to leave her. NTA Gnome 5314, NTA. You did something brave by opening up and she threw it back in your face. I'm sorry that you've faced such rejection your whole life. Unfortunately, that is all too common for men who have been sexually assaulted. It's up to you to decide if you want her back but either way is valid. OP. Thank you so much. I'm pretty sure this happens a lot to women as well. I went to a few anonymous meetings and heard a lot of the same from women who claim people just thought they were trying to get a settlement or something. Hot Cross Buns, 72, NTA. As a CSA survivor, the turning point for me in my marriage was when he told me to get over it and it's been so long. We are now divorced. While it wasn't the sole reason I left, knowing that he wasn't a safe space for me anymore, if at all, was a driving force. So while I won't tell you to leave her, I will say you do need to speak with a professional regarding the assault and keep her at a distance while you work through your emotions. She can never take back what she said to you and there needs to be consequences for that. Send PHX. And to add to the part about talking to a professional, OP, you mentioned the ones you've talked to haven't helped. I would keep trying and go to a different therapist until you find one with whom you mesh well. See if you can find one who has a focus on sexual abuse trauma and even check if they have experience in this area with male clients. Unlucky_addendum. 3425, NTA also. I wouldn't call what you did trauma dumping. You opened up to your wife. You're supposed to support each other. I'm sure she was probably shocked, would explain some of her lack of empathy. But to call you a liar and a narcissist, no. You've spent enough time being invalidated by assholes. Deleted user, not only that. Weaponize the trauma of one of the worst things that could ever happen to someone to make OP feel small, guilty, betrayed, insecure, alone, invalid, then call them a narcissist and a liar. To retaliate for being called out not taking the bins out. It's monstrous. OP is right to consider that an instant relationship ends. Because fuck me it's so many layers of evil. Imaginary Yak 6487, NTA. Therapy. I'm a CSA survivor. I'm a woman. I told my ex-husband about some of it after a trauma response to something he was attempting to do sexually. I wasn't comfortable and didn't think I could. He seemed to be understanding. One night after he had been drinking heavily, he tried to do this again and I said no. He said, "Why not? I'm not the one who R'd you, so don't take your bullshit out on me by denying me." He assaulted me and did it anyway. Did y'all know that back in the late 80s there was no laws on the books about martial rape until 1993? BC, you couldn't rape your wife back then? He's an ex-husband for a reason. She needs to be an ex for a reason as well. I wish you the best. Leanna Shaw. I don't think you can call that trauma dumping. If she was some random girl you were on a first date with, yeah, sure. But she's your wife, and that's the sort of established relationship that should be a safe place for you to open up about past traumas. The fact that it ended up not being safe isn't your fault, and I'm so sorry that she responded to you the way she did. I understand feeling conflicted about divorce, because it is such a hard thing to go through, but you absolutely would not be wrong to do so. I wish you the best, whatever you decide to do. AITA does not have a consensus bot, but OOP was voted NTA in most comments. Most of the comments were supportive, giving advice and telling their stories. Some downvoted commenters advised OOP to never cry or open up in front of women. Update. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for all the amazing love and support. For the first time in my life I felt heard and didn't just feel like a burden to people. I don't know what I did to deserve any of this, but I just want to let you all know that I'm beyond grateful as for the update. Shortly after posting, I decided to go back home. I had work the next day and didn't want to burden my friend with my marital issues any longer. Upon coming home I was met with her screaming at me for just leaving the apartment and ghosting her without having an adult conversation with her. I just let her know how hurt I was by the things she said to me and that I needed some time to myself to gather my thoughts. She tried arguing back with how there is nothing to think about and that I was being an immature crybaby. From that point onwards we have barely been on speaking terms. I know a lot of people are going to be mad hearing this, but the longer I thought about my marriage and my wife, the more I wanted to give her another chance. She wasn't perfect by any means, but neither was I. A lot of my past relationships ended as a result of my past catching up with me, but I really want to change it this time. She isn't the first partner friend to have this type of reaction to what I went through. I know it's tough, but I feel like I just needed to bite the bullet if it meant keeping my sanity. I didn't want to start over again. After we somewhat started talking to each other again, I sat her down for a serious conversation and let her know again how hurt I was by everything she said. I let her know about all the ridicule I suffered as a result of me opening up and her having the same reaction, just reopened unhealed wounds. She just kept quiet until I mentioned couples therapy. She then started crying, but not for the reason I thought. I tried holding her, but she just pushed me away and screamed that I seriously thought about ending our marriage over some silly argument we had and that I was just trying to make up some sob story after watching Baby Reindeer for attention and sympathy. According to her, all of this was just too convenient to be believable. If it was real, why didn't I mention any of this throughout the 6 years we have been together? At this point I even started tearing up. I apologized for keeping this from her for so long and then tried reassuring her that I in fact wasn't making this up, but she just slapped me and stormed off to bed. That was a week ago and I have been sleeping on the couch ever since. Whenever I try to speak to my wife, she just makes snarky comments towards me and just storms off. I just cry myself to sleep most nights and just wish I never fucking watched that show. None of this shit would have happened. I currently don't have the money for therapy and just feel lost. I don't want a divorce. I want to try and make this work, but this whole mess is just so draining. I'm not in contact with my family, so I don't have anyone I can turn to with this. How would you guys move forward in this situation? Relevant comments. Just Anthony. There is no saving this relationship. From the looks of it, you're going to end up miserable and ultimately stop telling her things to avoid arguments and/or belittling from her end. Be honest with yourself. What exactly are you looking for in marriage counseling? She'll need her own individual therapy before she can take on marriage counseling. It won't get anywhere if only one person acknowledges there's a problem. OP, I understand you've been with her for 6 years and she's by far the best you've had, but she isn't the best for you, let alone the one. Why compromise the rest of your life to her when you can get out and move on? You're only 27. You have so much time to get out there and find someone who loves and respects you. All of you. You still have so much time to find someone who'll take you and your trauma seriously. I've worked hard for 17 years to support my family, only to discover my wife's betrayal and that some of my kids aren't mine. Original post. Hi, I'll try to keep this short. Both in our 30s and have been together 17 years. I male 30s and am the sole provider for my family of 6, partner and 4 kids. 2 high-energy dogs. I work 5 days a week and sometimes work on weekends if we need a little more cash. My partner is a SHM and hasn't worked since our eldest was born, by her own choice. I wake up at 5 a.m. and take the dogs out. Prepare kids' lunches, snacks, ensure all school essentials such as bags etc. are at the front door, then head to work in a physically demanding job. Kids are picked up for daycare, school at 7. Due to after-school activities and clubs etc. they're not home until 6. I come home at 7 and make dinner most nights. Help with homework, do bath time for the little ones, do dishes, take dogs out for a longer walk again, put little ones in bed if the house is a mess, I will of course clean it. I pay for everything: mortgage, bills, insurance, groceries, clothes, toys, technology, after-school activities, dates, a woman to deep clean the house once a month. My partner wants to go on a 2-week-long vacation with her friends which will overlap with the weekend away I had planned with my brother who I rarely get to see as we live so far away. She wants me to cancel my trip as she's tired and needs a break. We got into an argument over it in which unkind things were said on both sides, but I am unwilling to budge on this. How do I get through to her that I need some rest? TLDR. I pay for everything, do housework, childcare etc. while my wife is a SAHM. She wants to go on a 2-week-long vacation with her friends, which means I won't be able to go on a weekend trip with my brother which was planned well in advance. We argued in which she told me I need to help out more and I basically said what's in the title. How do I get through to her? Edit/additional info. Hello all, sorry I haven't replied to many comments, but I have read most of them. I've seen a couple questions I'd like to answer and figured that making a post would be better than replying to individual comments. My children are between 16 and 6. My wife doesn't take anyone to their clubs/activities. Younger children's school finishes at 3 p.m. Their clubs are in the school. Older kids' school finishes at 3:30. They stay in a club until 4:30 and then go to a youth group with their cousins until they come home. My eldest makes their way to and from school on their own while my youngest is picked up and dropped off. Kids are of course able to eat breakfast at home, but often enjoy eating with their friends before school starts at 8. My wife doesn't walk the dogs because she doesn't like to, and frankly, they don't like her. I enjoy my time walking the dogs because it allows me some time to think. We have a large yard with dog houses, toys and some agility equipment for them to use while I'm gone. They also get mental stimulation through Kongs and puzzle toys which have been prepared and stored in the freezer. What does my wife do all day? Honestly, she's not isolated. She often tells me of things she's done with her friends, sister, mother etc. She goes to the gym, does and enjoys hobbies such as embroidery, knitting and some jewelry design. She changes what she likes to do, says it keeps things fresh. Housework-wise she does the laundry, I fold and distribute later. She will give dogs water and prepared meals. Enrichment. We have those robot vacuums and air purifiers to deal with the dog hair, but my wife will vacuum if heated. I wipe the countertops, put dishes in the dishwasher after meals. Older kids take care of their own rooms, bathrooms for an allowance. Have you ever not truly noticed something until it's right in front of your face? I was so mad because I wanted to go see my brother and she wanted to go on vacation with her friends. Yes, she wants me to pay for it. And things have been like this for so long that I didn't see how unfair and imbalanced things were until I truly started to look at how our duties were distributed. You've all given me a lot to think about. I'll answer some comments later. Update 1. Some of you have suggested that I enable her behavior and I'd like to address it, to explain how things got this way to begin with. My wife worked from age 16 to 20, but I'd often come home after work during the early stages of her pregnancy and she would tell me of how bad the morning sickness had been and how she was getting in trouble at work for being late or not turning up due to the issues she was having. One night, after a long discussion about things, she suggested that it would be easier and better for her and the baby if she stayed home during the pregnancy. I was reluctant at first because we weren't exactly swimming in cash, but ultimately the health of my wife and child were more important than a few months of added stress. To save money, we moved in with my wife's older sister and her husband. We split rent and utilities, but we're still saving some money. The pregnancy wasn't easy on her, she was often cranky and uncomfortable and as a result could be quite mean, rude and a bit handsy. So after further discussions with my wife and her sisters, I took on more of the household duties such as cooking etc. When my eldest was born, my wife's sister helped with childcare while I was at work for the first year, But after she and my wife had a fight when he was about a year old, we moved into our own place. But my wife struggled during the day when I wasn't there to help, so we ultimately decided to put him in another daycare facility. I would drop him off on my way to work and would pick him up on my way back home when I finished. Once home, one of us would cook dinner while the other watched the baby. Back then we had no pets, so household duties weren't too much and could be handled by a couple hours cleaning on Saturday or Sunday when we could split it between us both. When my son was 3, my wife's sister offered to get her a job where she worked. My wife had to do an interview, but my SIL was confident she'd get the position. My wife was reluctant and nervous about returning to work, but attended the interview and was offered the job. I don't remember much of our celebrations that night, but it ended in the conception of our second child. My wife told me when she'd been at her new job for just over a month. She stuck it out for a couple more weeks, but was fired due to not turning up for shifts. I asked one of her doctors about the issues she was having so early in the pregnancy, back pain, leg pain, nausea, etc., but my wife cut me off before I could finish and asked me to leave the room. When we got home, she berated me for speaking to her doctor like she was a child and told me that if she wants something brought up to her doctor regarding her pregnancy, that she'd do it herself. I had embarrassed her because she knew her body and knew what was normal and what wasn't. I still thought the issues had to be addressed with her doctor, but whenever I brought it up her mood swings would get worse. My meal came to live with us when my second was born for a short while when I returned to work after my paternity leave. When my daughter was about 4 months old, my wife expressed that she was having difficulty looking after her by herself during the day, but my Mill, who had her own life and responsibilities, couldn't come back and stay indefinitely. We had a 2-bedroom apartment then and having her sleep on the couch didn't seem fair to me. So we enrolled my daughter in daycare while my son was at nursery. My son went to daycare after nursery as well, so I'd pick them both up around 6 p.m. and head home. My wife promised she would speak to her doctor about the possibility of depression, etc., and her mood did improve with the additional help with the children. My wife took on cooking and cleaning duties then, but struggled as well. I would often come home to burned, ruined food, and would need to make something else anyway. So I ended up cooking dinner most nights so we wouldn't be wasting food. During a weekend away for a friend's wedding, when my daughter was 5, I suggested that my wife go back to work. Both kids were in school now and I thought we could improve our lifestyle with 2 incomes. We had recently bought a house because the apartment was too small for us and the children needed their own rooms. She seemed hesitant, which I understood after being out of work for so long, but she agreed. She applied for several positions but had no luck with interviews or callbacks. We found out she was pregnant with our third not long after that, and returning to work was put on hold again. The pregnancy was difficult as expected, but again my Mill came to stay when I had to return to work. She stayed for a while but had to return to her own home eventually. Before she left, my wife told me that she feared she would struggle with our second daughter just as she had the first 2. I tried to reassure her, but she seemed to become insanely depressed the second her mother left. I would return home with the 8 and 5-year-old to a screaming baby and nothing done around the house. Her mood and actions affected the entire house. So reluctantly I put her second daughter in daycare as well, but I told my wife she had to talk to her doctor and that we'd no longer be having any more children. She was, and we had a huge fight about it. But I got a vasectomy and she accepted it. We've always used protection. My wife is on birth control and I always use condoms, but given that it had already failed twice for us, when my first was conceived after my 21st I was so drunk I don't think I wore one, our second after celebrating her new job, and our third at our friend's wedding. I didn't want it to happen again. But obviously the universe had other plans for us, and our third daughter was born 2 years after our second when we were celebrating a promotion I'd gotten at work. Obviously this is a brief summary of events and there have been several other moments through the years when I've suggested she go back to work, but I thought I'd try to provide further background for those who are curious about how we got to where we are. Someone asked if my wife has had a break recently. She has never taken 2 weeks away before, but she goes away a couple of times every year for weekend trips with family and friends. The longest she has been gone is a week. In regards to the dogs and why they don't like her, she doesn't like them. She thinks the mental stimulation I provide through Kong toys, games, puzzles, etc. is unnecessary, but freaks out if their energy levels are too high. One is a German Shepherd which I was gifted for my birthday, and the other is a German Shepherd Malinois mix my wife brought home because she thought our GSD needed a friend. Yes, they have been to training and were originally in doggy daycare for the first couple years. On to the update. Update 2. So, as one of you suggested, I took a day off of work. I genuinely wasn't feeling too good either, but I intended to speak to my wife about the situation while the children were at school. Kids all left for school by 7-ish. My wife came downstairs at 11:45 and seemed very shocked to see me. She asked what I was doing at home and I explained I took a sick day as I wasn't feeling well. The first words out of her mouth were, "But we need the money, you don't look that bad." I made a face, and she quickly asked what was wrong and asked if she could get me anything. I asked for water and we sat on the couch, but soon her phone rang and she went off into the kitchen to talk. She came back a while later and asked if I wanted to get something to eat, and I said we could make something from the kitchen. She said she wanted to go out and I said we could order takeout, but I wasn't in the mood to go out. The dogs had been sitting by the chest freezer waiting in the pantry for their lunchtime enrichment for 10 minutes now, and I asked if she was going to feed them. She flopped onto the couch and asked me to get it. I said no. She asked again, and I said no, again. She glared at me, but eventually got up and gave it to them. She asked me to take her out again several times, and I kept saying no. I was starting to get a migraine, which I told her, but she kept asking, suggesting we could go shopping, she could get her nails done and we could enjoy the day together. I refused, said we had something to talk about and she said we would then go upstairs. She came back down 40 minutes later dressed up and said if I wasn't going to take her out, she'd go herself. I tried to get her to sit down so we could talk, but she blew me a kiss at the door and rushed outside without even locking it. While she was out, I took some of your advice and canceled the cleaning lady we have. I apologized to her, as I really did like her, but she was very understanding and I think we parted on good terms. She returned home at 8 p.m. and immediately asked where dinner was. I told her the kids and I had already eaten. She asked where her dinner was and I told her she'd have to make something for herself. She said she'd just order something and I told her no. This gave her pause and she looked at me like I'd just told her she had to starve. She said she couldn't cook and so told her I know she's perfectly capable of making something. We have plenty of food, it's not like she has to be Gordon Ramsay to stick a tin of soup or something on the stove. She left again, and returned 30 minutes later with McDonald's for herself, which set the younger kids off. Yes, they'd already eaten, but she walked in the door finishing her burger and drink with an empty bag and McFlurry tub. Our youngest asked why she didn't bring her any ice cream and my wife said Daddy said I wasn't allowed to. I did not say this, and I swear it took more strength than I'd like to admit not to yell at her in front of our daughter. When the kids were in bed, I asked her to sit and talk about the situation regarding our trips. She asked if I'd rescheduled with my brother and I firmly told her no and that I wouldn't be. I tried to have a conversation. I explained I felt our duties were incredibly uneven and that I'd like for her to take on more responsibilities with the children and the house. She argued that she does enough and I asked her to make a list. She put laundry down, feeding the dogs, making doctor's appointments and grocery shopping. And I brought out my own list with everything I've told you guys so far and added that I created the dogs' meals, she simply has to give it to them, I fold and distribute laundry, take kids to doctor's appointments and that the groceries are ordered through an app on her phone, delivered to the house and I put them away. She got up then. I asked what she was doing and she said she was going upstairs. I didn't argue. I didn't want it to resolve an argument and wake the kids up. She was visibly shaking with anger. A while later I went upstairs as well. She was on the phone to someone and when I entered the room she demanded I leave and go sleep on the couch. I refused and climbed into bed. She hung up the phone and demanded again that I sleep on the couch and again I refused. She grabbed me and physically tried to drag me out. That resulted in a fight and I ended up sleeping on the couch because she was going to wake the kids up again. The following days were much the same. I have stopped folding and putting away her laundry. I do it for myself and the younger kids and my two oldest take their piles and put them away themselves. I still cook for the kids, but have told my wife that she has to make her own meals. Petty, I know. I think my eldest heard us arguing because he asked if he could take the dogs out for a couple walks with his friend during the week. He hazes, and he says he's enjoying it, but I think he and my wife had an argument the other day because he's been very distant with her and things just feel off. He's asked me about 3 times if I love him, or course I've told him there is nothing he could ever do to make me not. Yes, I've tried to talk to him about it, but he doesn't want to talk yet and I need to respect that. I think pushing him could be a mistake. Thursday night my wife asked if we could have a drink as I had to leave on Friday to see my brother. I had one but honestly it went right to my head and honestly just wanted to sleep. She kept trying to initiate sex, but I wasn't in the mood. I woke up Friday morning and my wife was gone. So was her suitcase. I've texted and called but there's been no answer other than a text telling me we'd talk about it when she's back. She ignored me and went on her trip regardless, and I am furious. I have left her some cash in the bank account. She has the card too, but have removed everything else into another account. I had to tell my brother why I wouldn't be coming to see him, and he arrived here on Saturday with my nephew and 2 nieces. The house is very full, but honestly it feels more open than it has in a long time. The kids seem relaxed and so do the dogs. I don't know what will happen with my wife, but I am done. I can't afford a lawyer right now, and unfortunately I don't know anyone who could give me a deal or do me a favor, but this marriage is over. It should have been a long time ago. TLDR. Wife and I talked, had an argument, she went on trip regardless, and my brother is here with his family. This sub only allows one update, so if I post anything further it will be on my own profile. Relevant comments. OOP on if his wife might have undiagnosed health problems including PPD. OOP. I spoke to her doctor about the issues she was having because she would not. He asked her what was happening, how she was, and she would say the pregnancy was fine, she was having no issues, yet at home all I got was how hard things were, how ill she felt, how sore she was. Screaming, yelling at me. I went to bed because I am 6.5 and work a physically and mentally demanding job. It is not good for my body to sleep on a 2-seater couch. I wanted to sleep as I had work in the morning. She escalated and got physical, not me. She made the argument worse, not me. Undiagnosed PPD? She has been to her doctor who had diagnosed her with nothing, she told me so herself, and as for me knocking her up, it takes 2 people to create a child. We do not live in America and my wife is pro-choice. If she wants to terminate, she has the ability to do so. I told her after our second was born that I didn't think having more kids was a good idea, and she insisted. I said the same thing after our third and after my vasectomy, and she lost her mind. Let her go on vacation and feel like herself for the first time in forever. Did she not feel like herself when she went on multiple weekends away last year with her friends? Does she not feel like herself when she's hanging with the girls for lunch dates throughout the month? Do you know the last time I saw my brother in person? Before the pandemic. He is here to support me. If you want my wife to go on vacation so I can't, then it's perfectly reasonable that my brother can come to the home I pay for when I need him. Are you my wife? Update 3. I'm not going to add this to the post as it's already long enough. Please excuse any spelling mistakes as I'm so tired. Thank you all, but I'm not in America. I know a lot of you have suggested I message her telling her I'm going to divorce her, etc., but I think I'm going to play it cool, act like I've accepted her decision so she's not on guard. I know she said something to my son, but he won't tell me what it is, and I feel like if I push him to he might not ever, but my nephew and him are hanging out a lot. They're close despite not seeing each other much, so I'm hoping he might confide in him and maybe open up. I'm not just letting this go, we will talk, but I don't want to push him too much. I am not a lightweight, I can drink. But I have been exhausted, and I mean very exhausted for some time now, and I think that maybe that's why I passed out after having 1 drink. But I would be lying to myself and to you if I said I wasn't suspicious. I am suspicious a lot now. I swear, I'm not an idiot, but I really feel like one now. Some of you have suggested that I get the kids' DNA tested, especially my youngest, and while I know that this is likely something I'll have to do, it breaks my heart to think that they're not mine. My girls all look the same, just older versions of each other, so if I have to DNA test the youngest, I have to do them all. I never wanted kids. This is why I've always used condoms. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I love my own. I love these kids, regardless of the DNA test. They are mine, but I fear if it comes back that they're not. It could damage our relationship. My brother has read my posts and spent the last days telling me everything he hates about my wife, obviously not in front of the kids. He's pretty funny, and I feel like I haven't been able to laugh like this in a long time. He says he's going to make a Reddit account. Lord knows what he'll say. Writing this update has opened my eyes further. I see how the timing of wanting her to go back to work leans up with each pregnancy, but when these things are years apart, and you're concentrating on supporting the family and work, your brain sometimes pushes these thoughts away until something triggers them again, and boom, you're slapped in the face with the realization that your entire relationship is potentially built on a mountain of lies. She has her phone and iPad with her, so I can't check any of that. But I'm going to be going through her stuff. Is it in envisioning privacy? Likely. Do I care right now? No. I feel like I've wasted the majority of my life, the good years, and that feels horrible to say when I have 4 kids. I promise I don't mean that they're a waste. As I said in the post, this marriage is over. I am done. My kids deserve better, but I won't be alone when I confront her. As I said, she can get handsy, and no, I have never retaliated and I don't want to be put into a position where I need to. I thank you all for your comments, your insight, your kindness. I know I haven't replied to many comments at all, but don't really have time to do so when there are so many, but I am trying to respond to DMs as that seems like the easier thing to do. I want to ask my Sil what actually happened with my wife and that job. But I don't want her to know I'm suspicious. My Sil is a kind woman, but she is my wife's sister, so her loyalties lay with her, I suppose, and I don't want to alert my soon-to-be ex. Does anyone have any ideas how I can do this? Seems odd to bring up a job my wife had for a very brief time years ago. I wish you all the best. Relevant comments. OOP on the accusations for not respecting his wife's needs and wants. OOP, how do I not respect her needs, wants? I pay for everything and do the majority of the child, pet care and housework. I have not gone on vacation in years because I was providing for my family. I have given her everything she's wanted for the past 17 years and she couldn't give me a weekend with my brother. Why couldn't we both go on vacation? Because I don't randomly have the money to fund 2 weeks away for her. I can't just up and leave my 16-year-old to look after 3 younger kids and 2 high-energy dogs. I couldn't take them with me because that would mean multiple plane tickets and accommodations, food etc. for them, as well as dog sitting, boarding for the dogs. New update. Hello all, I'm sorry it's taken so long to update. Things are not good. While this update will be small, I will try to do a longer one when things are a little better. Yes, we are separated and will be getting a divorce. My FIL has graciously offered to help. It's taken me so long to update because, as most of you already knew, some of the children aren't mine. My eldest son is mine, my 3 daughters are not. I found out not long after my first update. And while I thought I could handle the news clearly, my body couldn't and I had a heart attack. Thankfully my brother was with me and called an ambulance. I am recovering, but Jesus Christ scared the shite out of me and my family. As some of you may remember, when my ex left for vacation, I took the majority of the money out of the account she used but left some as I didn't want to leave her stranded. That money, about 500 or so, was gone in a few days. She used her own money that she's been making from OnlyFans to fund her trip. Yes, I'm serious. She has only a fan account. My son had offered to take the dogs out for me during his lunch/free class time and walked in on his mother making content in the living room. She told him that I wasn't making enough money for the family to survive and that she had to be the only fan to help support us. She told him I was ashamed and embarrassed and that I would be very unhappy and hurt if he mentioned it. She told him that doing so could ruin our marriage and could lead us to divorce. My in-laws know everything, as my brother had to call them to help watch my kids while I was in the hospital. My FIL is furious and my MIL is just devastated. She keeps apologizing to me, like she's the one who betrayed me. My ex moved out. She tried to make me leave so she could stay in the house with the kids, but after a conversation with her father, she's renting a place. My eldest daughter and my son know the girls aren't mine. My ex told them after they said they didn't want to go live with her at her new place. My mill was with them at the time and, according to my daughter, began screaming at my wife for her behavior. My youngest 2 don't know yet. But they will. This isn't something I can keep from them forever. They already know that something is up. I've cut my hours back at work and have been able to work from home. It's obviously a desk job for now, but I am thankful to my boss for working with me on this. I came home to find out that my mill and one of my sills had cleared out my wife's hobby space and made it an office den for me. I am very grateful for their support during this. I know it can and be easy to take the side of your daughter, sister's ex-partner during a breakup, but I appreciate them. While things aren't great by any stretch of the imagination, I feel strange. Things seem calmer without my ex in the house. There seems to be more laughter around, and even the dogs appear more at ease. But I am so angry, which obviously isn't good for my heart. I've wasted a huge chunk of my life raising kids that aren't mine in a marriage that was messed up from the beginning. Now please, don't take what I said as me saying I regret my girls. I don't at all. They are smart, beautiful, cheeky little weirdos in love with all of my heart. But the betrayal stings. The fact that I've been working my ass off for years and she's been making thousands on OnlyFans and been keeping it to herself stings. I am ashamed, humiliated, embarrassed, angry, relieved. It's a mess of emotions in my head. But I know I'll get through it. Hopefully, I need to for my kids and dogs. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer in the comments. I threatened to cut off my children's inheritance if they don't become independent by getting real jobs. Am I the asshole for being too harsh? Hi Reddit. I am a 55-year-old father and accomplished company owner. I've been running my own business for about 30 years, and I've done well for myself. My wife, 53F, and I have been married for 29 years and have 2 adult children, Caleb, 28M, and Maya, 26F. My parents left me a considerable legacy when they died, which helped me expand my firm to where it is today. So let's pretend we're financially comfortable. Now, this inheritance isn't just a sliver of change, it's a life-changing sum of money that, in the wrong hands, might easily be wasted. My wife and I have always recognized the benefits of hard work. We did not come from a wealthy family and had to start from scratch. We wanted to give our children possibilities they didn't have, but I'm starting to wonder whether we went too far. I guess that's why I'm here. I need guidance. My parents were not tremendously wealthy, but we did okay. When they died, they gave me a considerable legacy, primarily real estate, which was rather inexpensive at the time. However, I did not use that money until I had earned my own. I wanted to prove to myself, and perhaps to them, that I could make it on my own, even after they left. So I threw my heart and everything into starting my business from scratch, and it is now doing exceptionally well. My wife and I have always lived nicely, and we have ensured that Caleb and Maya had everything they needed as they grew up. They attended the greatest schools, had unlimited opportunities, and never had to struggle as I did. But this is when things became difficult. When I started generating real money, I wanted to offer my children the life I never had. They attended the best schools, dressed the best, and had everything they needed. We established trust funds for them when they were born, so at the age of 21, they had more money in their accounts than I did at the time. Caleb and Maya grew up in an entirely different environment than mine. They never had to work summer jobs or worry about paying for college, and now they're grown-ups relying on trust funds with no actual jobs or ambition. They live in their own little bubble, entirely separated from the outside world. I had always thought that as they grew older, they would desire to make something of themselves, but that has not happened. Caleb spends his days hanging around with friends and spending money on flashy gadgets, whilst Maya is into the influencer lifestyle, attempting to construct a brand around herself with no actual substance. They are both entitled, lazy, and frankly, bullies. They have never had to struggle, and it shows. I adore my children, but seeing them like this is frustrating. They don't seem to understand the worth of anything because they have never had to earn anything. My wife, bless her heart, is far more patient than I am. She keeps telling me they'll figure it out eventually, but I'm not convinced. That is why I ultimately decided to take issues into my own hands. It all came to a climax during a family meal a few weeks ago. My wife and I were discussing our retirement plans, nothing too serious, just brainstorming ideas for what we might want to do after we retire from the business. Caleb and Maya, understandably, were uninterested in the discussion until I indicated that we'd have to decide how to manage the inheritance. Suddenly, they were all ears. I suggested that they take over the company in the future, but they promptly dismissed the idea. Caleb chuckled and stated that he did not want to squander his life working, and Maya made a sarcastic remark about how she is too preoccupied with her career to worry about it. I could feel my blood boiling. I asked them what they intended to accomplish with their lives, and they just shrugged it off. Caleb claimed he didn't need to work because the trust fund was sufficient, while Maya stated that she was building her brand, whatever that means. That's when I understood how far gone they were, and that my biggest error might have been giving them too much too quickly. When I was their age, I was already working hard to earn a living. I was on building sites at dawn, learning the craft from the ground up. My children, on the other hand, appear satisfied to sit back and live off the family's fortune, with little desire to pursue their own success. I attempted to convey that life is more than just coasting on what you've been given, but they didn't hear me. They made it apparent that they had no intention of working a real job or making any substantial contributions to society. It was like speaking to a brick wall. After supper, I could not stop thinking about it. My children are grown adults, but they behave like pampered teenagers. I couldn't shake the notion that I had let them down somehow. I spent years creating something that may prepare them for life, but instead of appreciating it, they simply take it for granted. Something had to change quickly. The next morning, I sat down with my wife and explained what I was thinking. We needed to stand firm, or our children would grow up to be useless people without a purpose. She wasn't delighted at first. As I previously stated, she is more patient than I am, but she finally agreed that something had to be done. At the next family supper, I informed Caleb and Maya that I was modifying the terms of their inheritance. They would no longer receive any money until they worked full-time for at least 2 years. And by real jobs, I mean full-time work that is unrelated to our family business and pays someone other than us. There will be no begging for a position or requesting favors from our pals. They needed to find their own path. The expressions on their faces were priceless. Caleb actually snorted, as if he couldn't believe I was serious, and Maya simply stared at me as if I had a second head. I stressed that this was non-negotiable. They could either step up and demonstrate their ability to succeed on their own, or they could say goodbye to their inheritance. Caleb was the first to react. He slammed his fork down, claiming it was wrong that I was holding their futures hostage. Maya, never to be outdone, jumped in, claiming that I was attempting to wreck their lives because I did not comprehend the current world. My wife attempted to negotiate, saying that we could find a common ground, but I stayed fast. I assured them that this was for their own good, even if they couldn't see it just now. Caleb and Maya left shortly after that. They both stormed out in rage, screaming about how I was ruining everything. My wife merely glanced at me, as if she didn't know whether she should be angry or proud. I told her I wasn't doing this to be harsh. I just wanted them to mature. But even as I said it, I wondered if I had made a big mistake. The aftermath of that dinner was immediate and severe. Caleb and Maya didn't communicate with us for a week, which is rare given how much they rely on us for everything. My wife was split between supporting me and wanting to smooth things over with the kids, but she ultimately stood by my side. She agreed that they needed a wake-up call, no matter how harsh. Caleb finally called, but it wasn't to apologize. Instead, he preferred to dispute. He said I was being unrealistic, and that expecting him to find a real job was setting him up for failure. He told me I didn't realize how difficult it was for his generation, how the employment market had changed, and how he shouldn't be compelled to do something simply to illustrate a point. I heard but did not back down. I reminded him that everyone has to start somewhere, and that if he was serious about his future, he'd figure out how to make it happen. Maya chose a different method. Rather than confront me directly, she attempted to go through her mother. She informed my wife that she was supporting her brand, and that I was hurting her career by pushing her to take a job she did not want. My wife, bless her, attempted to be diplomatic, but she eventually informed Maya that she needed to stop relying on us and start working on her own. Neither one of them took it well. Caleb accused us of being out of touch, and Maya claimed that we were sabotaging her progress. They both threatened to exclude us from their life, which seemed like a slap in the face. But we did not back down. We informed them that this was non-negotiable, and that if they wanted to inherit anything from us, they had to demonstrate their ability to make it on their own. We're now in a standoff. My wife is attempting to maintain order, but the children refuse to cooperate. They've made it clear that they believe we're being unreasonable, and they're not afraid to tell us so. Part of me feels terrible, as if I pushed too hard, but another part of me knows this is the correct thing to do. They need to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, even if it means being furious with us for a while. So Reddit, am I in a *** hole for giving my children this ultimatum? I want the best for them, but I don't want to push them away. Did I go too far, or is this tough love just what kids need? Update 1. 1 month later. Things became even more problematic when I posted about what was going on with my children. Caleb and Maya, still enraged by my ultimatum, decided to include the extended family. They went immediately to my in-laws and even contacted several of my cousins, talking about how unfairly they were handled. It wasn't long before I began receiving phone calls and texts from various family members, some of whom I hadn't spoken with in months, all wanting to comment on the situation. My parents-in-law were the first to call. They were understandably anxious and wanted to know what was going on. My father-in-law, who has always been a softie, believed I was being too severe and suggested I soften up with the kids. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, was more encouraging of my decision. She has witnessed firsthand how spoiled Caleb and Maya have become, and she is concerned that if we continue to enable them, they will never learn to fend for themselves. Then my cousins joined in. One of them, who is more like a brother to me, said he understood my point of view but cautioned me from pushing Caleb and Maya too far. He reminded me that our generation was raised with different ideals, and that I might need to be more aware of the pressures that young people face now. Another relative, a successful lawyer, accused me of attempting to control my children's life and advised me to let them sort things out on their own, even if it meant they failed. Despite the conflicting perspectives, I remained steady. I stressed to everyone who inquired that this was not about controlling Caleb and Maya's lives. It was about ensuring they had the necessary abilities and mindset to achieve on their own. I wasn't asking them to become CEOs overnight, but rather to demonstrate that they could hold down a job and contribute to society. I knew it wouldn't be easy for them, but I felt it was necessary. Caleb and Maya did not take this lying down. Caleb, the more rebellious of the two, decided to start a business. He claimed he was going to start day trading since he had read online about people making a lot of money doing it. He poured his little funds into it, but within weeks, it was evident that he was in over his head. He lost practically everything and then had the audacity to phone me begging for more money to invest. I told him no, that this was not the type of work I was talking about. He hung up on me, and we have not spoken much since. Maya went a different route. She began attending networking events, which appear to be little more than parties where people drink cocktails and discuss their brands. She said she was developing vital connections to help her advance her profession, but I knew otherwise. It was just another method to avoid doing a real job. When I asked how these events were translating into real opportunities, she became defensive and accused me of not believing in her. I informed her that I believed in hard work rather than playing pretend. At this point, it's evident that they're both looking for loopholes in my ultimatum. They want the inheritance without having to work hard, and it's annoying to watch them spend time on these half-baked plans. But as much as it hurts to see them struggle, I'm not backing down. Caleb and Maya began to make less phone calls as the weeks passed. When they did, the conversations were typically heated. They both attempted to guilt-trip my wife and me, claiming that we were abandoning them and that they couldn't believe we were prepared to destroy our relationship for money. Caleb even threatened to cut us off altogether if we did not back down. My wife was upset, but I could tell she was beginning to see things my way. She had always been the peacemaker, but even she was becoming upset with their behavior. We both realized it wasn't just about the money. It was about their futures, and we couldn't allow them to go down this road. Still, it was difficult to hear our children threaten to break ties with us, especially because all we wanted was for them to flourish on their own. At one time, Maya attempted to turn several of our friends against us. She claimed that we were unrealistic, didn't understand the new employment environment, and were setting her up for failure. Some of our acquaintances, particularly those with children of similar ages, sympathized with her, complicating matters even more. We began to receive unsolicited advice from individuals who had no idea what was going on, and it seemed as if the entire world had become engaged in our family drama. Despite this, my wife and I remained on course. We understood that succumbing now would only reinforce the behavior we were attempting to change, but it was difficult, really difficult. And I couldn't help but worry if we were doing the right thing. We decided to reduce Caleb and Maya's monthly allowances to make things more realistic for them. Until now, they had been receiving a rather large sum from us each month, which they spent for everything from rent to shopping sprees. But if we were serious about teaching kids to stand on their own, this had to cease. We also canceled the credit cards associated with our accounts. If they wanted to continue living the way they had been, they'd have to figure out how to pay for it themselves. The reaction was quick. Caleb called, enraged, claiming that we were attempting to bankrupt him. Maya wrote a lengthy emotional email accusing us of being uncaring and said that she didn't know how she would survive without our help. My wife and I read it together, and while it was difficult to watch her sad, we knew it was the push they needed. We responded by assuring her that this was a normal part of growing up and that we were certain she would figure it out if she tried. For the first time, they were confronted with the reality of limited cash. Caleb could no longer afford his expensive hobbies, while Maya had to cut back on her socializing. They were both angry, hurt, and bewildered, but we could only hope that this was the tipping moment. It was a tough love approach, but we felt it was the only way to get through to them. So, Reddit, what are your thoughts? Are we going too far, or is this just what they need? I'm staying solid in my decision, but it's taking a toll on our family. I would appreciate any help or insights you can provide. Update 2. 6 months later. Hello Reddit. We appreciate all of your help and advice over the past few months. It's been a difficult journey, but I thought it was time to update you on what's happened since my last post. First, I'd like to add that I took several of your comments seriously, particularly the ones about mixing tough love with emotional support. So this is what has been going on. Let us start with Caleb. He was missing for a bit after our most recent major disagreement. He wasn't returning calls, and when we did speak with him, it was evident he was still upset over the whole thing. I knew he was going through a difficult period, but I also realized he needed to figure things out for himself, so we gave him space. Caleb realized around 2 months after the ultimatum that he couldn't keep coasting on his remaining savings. With no income and no help from us, he was compelled to look for work. He initially sought to apply for high-paying opportunities in industries where he had no experience, but when those didn't work out, he had to lower his expectations. He eventually got a job at a local manufacturing business. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't what he wanted. But it was a legitimate job with genuine hours and a real payment. The first few weeks were tough. Caleb frequently complained about the physical effort, the early mornings, and the monotony of the job. He despised every minute of it and made sure we knew. But my wife and I remained supportive, encouraging him to persevere and reminding him that everyone has to start somewhere. He gradually, and I mean slowly, began to acclimate. He began to take pride in his work, and while he would never confess it to me, I could tell he was beginning to recognize the significance of what he was doing. He's been at the facility for nearly 4 months, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's no longer considering quitting every day. He's even started saving a little portion of his paycheck, which he'd never done before. It's a little step, but it's progress, and I applaud him for sticking to it. It's evident he's not quite there yet, but I'm seeing hints of the guy I always knew he could be. Now on to Maya. Her journey has been unique, but equally tough. After we took away her stipend and canceled her credit cards, she tried to keep up appearances for a while. She'd continue to brag on social media about her fantastic life, but it was clear that things were falling apart behind the scenes. Maya eventually understood she couldn't keep pretending things were fine. People stopped attending networking meetings when they discovered she couldn't actually provide anything important in return, and parties ceased being enjoyable when she couldn't afford to keep up with the crowd. It was a terrible wake-up call for her, and for a time, she appeared lost. But then something interesting occurred. One of the people she met at a networking event mentioned an entry-level position with a marketing agency. It wasn't enjoyable, and it certainly wasn't the influencer lifestyle she'd been looking for, but it was a job. After some coaxing and encouragement from my wife, she applied and was hired. She had a difficult first several weeks too. Maya was not used to answering to anyone and struggled to acclimate to the job's structure and deadlines. She contacted us several times in tears, unhappy with her supervisor or overwhelmed by her task, but like with Caleb, we remained supportive while telling her that this was part of growing up. She gradually regained her footing. She's been with the firm for approximately 3 months, and while she still doesn't love it, she's starting to understand the importance in what she's doing. She even discussed taking some courses to hone her talents, which is a significant step for her. With both Caleb and Maya now working, our family's dynamics have begun to evolve. Our once stressful and unpleasant family reunions have gradually become more relaxed. There is certainly some stress. Caleb and Maya aren't delighted with their new circumstances, but there is also a sense of relief. My wife and I have tried to be there for them as much as we can without giving in or bailing them out, and I believe they are beginning to appreciate that. Interestingly, Caleb and Maya have begun to bond via their common professional experiences. They have always been close, but this is different. They are commiserating about their work, sharing anecdotes about their difficulties, and even giving each other advice. It's good to see them supporting one another rather than relying solely on us for everything. Our extended family has also begun to come around. The family who initially condemned our decision are starting to recognize the advantages. They've seen the changes in Caleb and Maya, even commenting on how much more adult they appear. My wife and I still have moments of doubt, but we are increasingly confident that we made the right decision. I won't lie, witnessing my children suffer has been difficult. There have been times when I wondered if I made the right decision. But seeing them gradually begin to figure things out has been fulfilling in its own way. I know they aren't out of the woods yet, but they are making progress, which is all I can ask for. So that's where things are now. I know this trip is far from over, and there will be more hurdles ahead, but I am cautiously optimistic. Thank you again for all of your advice and assistance. It's been quite helpful as we navigate this difficult circumstance. I'll keep you all updated if there are any noteworthy developments. In the interim, any suggestions for how we can continue to help Caleb and Maya without coddling them would be very welcomed. Update 3. 1 year. Mark, hi Reddit. I am back with another update. It's been about a year since the whole affair began, and I wanted to explain where we are now. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who has followed our tale and offered advice. It's been a difficult year, but one of growth for all of us. Recently, we held a large family gathering to review how things were going. Caleb and Maya were both present, as was my wife, and it was the first time we'd all sat down together since the inheritance ultimatum began. I'm not going to lie. I was nervous. I wasn't sure how they'd react or whether they'd be willing to discuss their development. But to my surprise, the chat went better than I had anticipated. I began by telling them how proud I was of the progress they'd made over the last year. Caleb has stuck with his job at the manufacturing factory, and while he doesn't particularly enjoy it, he has made significant progress. He's acquired a strong work ethic, and his supervisor even told me, via a common contact, that Caleb has been doing an excellent job. He started saving money and is thinking of taking some night classes to better his skills. Maya, on the other hand, has begun to establish her foothold in the marketing world. She's still at the same company, but she's taken on additional responsibilities and even directed a few small projects. She started talking about her job with pride, which I hadn't heard her do before. She's also enrolled in several online classes to expand her knowledge, and she's starting to realize the importance of working her way up rather than expecting everything to come easily. We discussed the inheritance circumstances again to ensure that everyone was on the same page. I underlined that the terms remained unchanged, 2 years of steady, meaningful work before they could get their inheritance. Caleb and Maya both accepted this without fight, which was a huge relief. It's evident they're not happy about it, but they're not fighting it as hard as they were before. As we were winding up our talk, something unexpected happened. Caleb added that his employer had been speaking with him about a promotion. It's not a great leap, but it would entail more responsibility and a higher salary. He appeared shocked that he was being considered, but I was not. I've witnessed the changes in him over the past year, and I'm not surprised that his efforts are being recognized. He's still sorting things out, but for the first time, he's discussing his job as a long-term profession, rather than something he's doing to meet inheritance requirements. Maya also had some news. She's discovered a genuine joy for her marketing career, particularly the creative aspect. She's been discussing with her supervisor the prospect of moving into a more specialized function, and she's even considering returning to school to pursue a degree in marketing. This is a significant departure from the Maya of a year ago, who was more concerned with her social media following than with any genuine career path. It's been incredible to witness these developments in them. They're each starting to discover their own path, and while they still have a long way to go, they're making progress that I never imagined possible a year before. Our family dynamics have improved as a result of all of this, which has been both surprising and enjoyable. There's a true relationship today that didn't exist before. Our interactions are deeper, more meaningful, and less about money or material possessions. Caleb and Maya are beginning to perceive us as more than simply wealthy parents. We are individuals who care about their futures and happiness. We've also witnessed an improvement in Caleb and Maya's relationship. They'd always been close, but there was always a competitive edge between them, driven by who could obtain the most from us or live the most extravagant lifestyle. They now support one another in ways they never did before. They've even talked about collaborating on some side projects, combining Caleb's practical skills with Maya's creative abilities. It's early days, but it's encouraging to see children thinking about how to help one another rather than relying solely on us. This event has also brought me and my wife closer together. We've had to make some difficult decisions as a team, and while we haven't always agreed on everything, we've learned to communicate more effectively and support one another through the obstacles. It's been a learning process for both of us, as parents and partners. So, Reddit is where we're at. I am optimistic about the future, but I am aware that we are not yet out of the woods. The coming year will be critical, especially as they reach the 2-year milestone of the inheritance conditions. We'll continue to assist them as best we can, and I'll keep you all updated on how things proceed. Any ideas or suggestions on how to sustain this momentum would be highly appreciated. Update 4. Final update. Hi Reddit. It's been 2 years since I initially sought your assistance, and I wanted to provide you with one final update. It's been a long trip, and I can't thank you enough for all of your help and advice along the way. This experience has been tough, but also quite gratifying. As we approached the 2-year mark, the family felt a sense of expectancy. Caleb and Maya were both aware that the inheritance circumstances were about to be reviewed, and while they didn't say much about it, I could tell it was on their minds. They'd both come a long way since that fateful supper where I first laid down the law, and I was curious how they'd take this final exam. A few weeks before the 2-year mark, we held another family meeting. I wanted to sit down with Caleb and Maya, learn about their experiences over the last 2 years, and discuss what happens next. My wife and I were both nervous and eager. We'd seen so much progress in them, but we knew this was a key time. When we sat down for the meeting, I began by acknowledging how far they had gone. Caleb and Maya both appeared scared, but I could see pride in their eyes. They knew they'd worked hard, and I wanted to make sure they knew we noticed and appreciated it. Caleb was the first to speak. He discussed his time at the production factory and how he came to see work as more than simply a means to a goal. He's been promoted twice since my last update, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's beginning to recognize the value of hard effort and consistent advancement. He's also begun to take on some side projects, utilizing the talents he's gained at work to create something of his own. It's evident that he's considering his future in a way he never has before. Maya then told her story. She is still with the marketing agency, but her work has become more specialized, with an emphasis on creative projects. She's also taken some college courses in marketing and design, and she's discovered a genuine enthusiasm for her profession. Maya has always been creative, but now she's turning that creativity into something solid, something that could lead to a real job. She's pleased with her accomplishments and optimistic about the future. After they were finished, my wife and I discussed our ideas. We told them how proud we were of their growth, how they had overcome obstacles and learned from them. We discussed how important their trip has been and how it has prepared them for whatever is ahead. Then I surprised them. I informed them that due to their growth, we were increasing their inheritance. I stressed that this was more than just a reward for completing the 2 years. It was a recognition of the individuals they had become. They were astonished and, I believe, overwhelmed, but largely thankful. For the first time, I felt as if they genuinely appreciated the importance of what they were receiving. Not just the money, but also the lessons they acquired along the road. So where are we currently? Caleb and Maya are significantly better off than they were 2 years ago. Caleb is still working at the company while also working on his own projects, and he is considering starting his own firm eventually. Maya is excelling at her marketing agency and is thinking about obtaining a degree full-time. They've both matured tremendously, and I couldn't be more proud. So this is my final sign-off. Thank you for following our story and helping us along the road. If I could leave you with one piece of advice, it would be to never be hesitant to challenge your children, no matter how difficult it may be. Sometimes the most difficult decisions lead to the greatest growth. Good luck to everyone, and I hope your own parenting experiences are as rewarding as ours have been. Take care, Reddit, and who knows, perhaps I'll return someday with another story. Until then, cheers. My 12-year-old daughter left me for her rich stepfather. After losing her mother and being kicked out by her stepfather, she returns broke at 22. My ex-wife, then 41, female, and I, then 45, male, split up 12 years ago. She found solace in the company of a wealthy man. Sorry, there's no better way to put it. She was a stay-at-home wife and mother who had little interest in working or earning money. She wanted to stay at home and take care of the house and our daughter. I never forced my daughter to work after she was born, even though my finances were tight. I was working 2 jobs and earning enough money to eat well. However, my salary could not afford the luxury lifestyle she desired. I will not go into detail regarding my relationship with my ex. This piece is about Laura. Details regarding my ex-wife may be covered in another post. When Laura was 10, my ex-wife admitted that she had been sleeping with a wealthy man. She moved out on the same day that we filed for divorce. We became co-parents to Laura. Because I had 2 jobs and she didn't, we decided that I'd have Laura on weekends. I formed a strong bond with Laura. We have some fantastic adventure trips together. Even though the divorce was traumatic, spending time with her made me feel so much better. As time passed, I noticed Laura was delaying our meetings. Previously, every Friday, I looked forward to her email explaining what she planned to do over the weekend. However, the email's substance eventually changed to, "Sorry, I can't make it this weekend. We're going skiing," or, "We have other fancy sports or SL trips with stepfather." I initially ignored this, believing her stepfather was simply trying to keep her happy and that I should not be jealous. I eventually concluded Laura didn't want to see me as regularly. Our weekly meetings became bi-monthly, then monthly, only one day of the weekend. I saw she was not enjoying our time together as much as she used to. When it became clear that she was purposefully avoiding me, I challenged her. I tried to explain that I was doing everything I could to keep her happy, even overextending myself financially. Despite this, she continued to forsake our weekends together. She began lying, claiming she had schoolwork or projects on weekends when in fact, she was going out with her stepfather. Her excuses sounded real at times, but they were mostly made up. Whatever little time we had together, she would always complain about how much better it was going out with her stepfather since he doesn't look at the price tag before ordering anything. Even on trips I accompanied her on, she would prefer to spend time with her stepfather. She began grumbling about tiny inconveniences that previously did not disturb her. But she never stopped talking about the new PlayStation 5 or bike her stepfather gave her, or the expensive stuff her mother purchased. I felt she was too young to grasp that showering someone with material possessions is not love. The problem got worse when she ignored me for almost 3 months. Despite several calls and texts, I received no response. Desperate, I called my lawyer and told him everything. He informed me I could sue my ex-wife for alienating Laura. But Laura was 12 at the time, and my lawyer advised that if she admitted in court that she no longer wanted to spend time with me, it may exacerbate the situation. Laura could say she needed more money to live up to her lifestyle, which could imply increased child support. Yes, I was already paying child support, despite the fact that her wealthy stepfather provided so much for her. I dropped the idea of suing my ex for custody. There was no purpose. My attorney advised we have a formal out-of-court conversation with them. It would help me understand what they wanted. I agreed to go this way, and my lawyer wrote them a letter with extensive allegations. He said that we desired an out-of-court settlement. I had a strange sensation that my ex-wife would refuse to talk since she had enough money and time to burn in a court action. To my astonishment, she agreed to discuss and resolve this matter in front of the attorney. My ex-wife's husband attended the conference, as did my ex-wife and Laura. They both swore they were beyond this and had no idea if Laura was ghosting me. They admitted they had no part to play in it and stood aside, allowing Laura to speak for herself. Laura then delivered the most devastating blow of my life. She demanded that I relinquish my parental rights. That was 10 years ago, yet I still remember the frightening event vividly. I was dead silent for, I'm not sure how long. My lawyer pressed me for a response, but I just stared at everyone. What do I say? When I looked at my ex-wife, her lips twisted into a smile, as if she knew what was going to happen. I took Laura's hand and murmured, "Baby, I hope you understand what you're saying. Giving away my parental rights would mean you could no longer call me dad. You would no longer be my daughter." She shook off my hand, stared straight in my eyes and said, "Yeah, that's what I want." I was astounded. I ran out of words to explain the implications of her decision. My lawyer attempted to explain the legal repercussions, such as property concerns and other issues, but she refused to change her decision. She looked at her stepfather and questioned, "Once he disowns me, you'll be able to adopt me as your daughter, right?" He nodded with wide eyes and replied, "Certainly, darling." Words cannot express the bitterness I felt at that moment. My world was destroyed, to say the least. I lost my sense of purpose in life. After my wife of 15 years cheated on me, Laura was the one bright spot in my life. She was the one I looked forward to after working 2 jobs. I didn't date anyone for 2 years after my divorce. I didn't have the time and didn't want to. I wanted to give Laura my complete love and attention. This is what I received in return. She wanted to get rid of me. My state was so pitiful that I couldn't think clearly. My lawyer borrowed some time to respond to them. I'm sure my ex and her husband slept well that night after seeing me in such a vulnerable position. My lawyer drove me home. After he went, I cried like a baby for hours in my empty house. My heart was filled with a wide range of emotions. I contacted my folks and informed them of Laura's desire. They were completely terrified and hurried over to comfort me. My parents, particularly my mother, were really close to Laura. She had been caring for her for over a year when my wife needed surgery and was forced to stay in bed. During that time, my mother took care of both Laura and my ex-wife. Mom gave it a go, but Laura insisted that I give up my parental rights. She passionately wanted to be her stepfather's daughter. He had informed her that he couldn't adopt her unless I relinquished my parental rights. I asked my lawyer what my choices were. He suggested we could sue them for manipulating Laura, but because she was 12, it would be difficult to show she was being manipulated. Besides, they had the money to pursue a long court action, whereas I did not. Plus, what's the sense of battling when the person I'm fighting for has already decided on their side? It was a lost battle. I had no choice but to swallow the bitter pill and give up my fatherly rights. I spent the next week wrapped up in my bed. I left my second job. Who do I work for now? I lost all motivation to get up in the morning and go to work. I took so many absences from my full-time job and struggled so hard that I was eventually dismissed. I moved to a different town, slept at a subway station, and walked around like a crazy person for days. I gradually got out of it, found a new job, went to the gym, and enrolled in treatment. It took me around 2 years to recover. I didn't date, but I did go on a lot of solitary treks as a form of treatment. During one of these visits, I met my current wife, Brianna. She had a 5-year-old daughter named Emma. After a while of dating, we moved in together. Brianna introduced me to Emma for the first time, and I broke down. She reminded me of Laura. I strongly wanted Emma to address me as Dad, but I held back. I did not want to damage myself again. I had a healthy but distant relationship with Emma. On her 12th birthday, Emma requested me to adopt her. I felt so overwhelmed. I now have 2 kids, Emma and Amy, a 3-year-old toddler, with my second wife. I believe I've provided enough context on my circumstance. Fast forward to a week ago. I was returning from work when I noticed a familiar face smiling at me. As I approached, I saw it was none other than Laura. I felt shivers, as if I had seen a ghost. She was taller, slimmer, and much more attractive, but it was easy to recognize her. She ran up to me and hugged me, saying, "Dad, I'm your daughter Laura. I finally found you." I gazed at her with lifeless eyes and replied, "I have 2 daughters, but you're not one of them." Before she could say anything, I began walking away. She followed me, but I turned around and yelled, "Quit following me or I'll report you." I did not see her after that. The next day, she arrived at my residence. As soon as I opened the door, she exclaimed, "I apologize, I know you're angry with me, but please hear me out. Mom has died and Dad, stepfather, has brought his mistress home. He doesn't love me as much as he did when Mom was living. He's cut me off financially and says I need to start earning my own money. When I pestered him, he threatened to disown me." I listened to her outburst and said with a straight face, "So what?" She began pleading with me for another opportunity. I screamed at her to leave and slammed the door in her face. She then went to my mother and apologized. She was able to persuade my mother with her emotions, and now she wants me to reunite with Laura for the sake of our family. The anguish she caused me is preventing me from reconciling with her. Am I in a *** hole? Update 1. Some of you inquired about my ex-wife, wondering whether she was a gold digger, if she manipulated Laura, or if it was my fault. So here's a quick background on my ex-wife. We dated for 2 years before we married. She worked at a neighborhood bar as a waitress while we were dating. I was a regular there, which is how we first met. She was living with a coworker. I worked one full-time job and lived in a studio apartment. That's when I acquired another job, saved more money and purchased a house to accommodate her. We were married, and she quit her work. For the first 6 to 7 years of our marriage, she was pleased and content with my salary. But then she began moaning about how her friends' husbands earned more money. She would even tell me that instead of settling for me, she should have waited longer to find a richer husband. It was offensive, and we would have fights. Of course, I couldn't just stand there and take the obscenities she hurled at me. Eventually, our connection became chilly and distant. One day, she revealed that she had been sleeping with a wealthy man and would be going out to live with him. I didn't beg her to stay, but I did warn her that these wealthy men regard women like her as toys. They play with them and then discard them when they're finished. She said she didn't rush things this time, and she'd been seeing him for 2 years. She trusted him enough to live with him. After that, I didn't have anything to say. I kept quiet and sucked it up. Some of you pointed out that Laura was just 12 when she requested me to disavow her, and that I should have battled for her. You are correct that she was a juvenile when all of this occurred, and I do not deny that she was emotionally and financially misled. When she became 18, she had the option of contacting me, but she chose not to. She's now 22 and is just seeking out since her stepfather cut her off financially. Someone questioned how my ex-wife died. I didn't ask Laura about it, but she informed my mother that her mother died from a serious illness. Laura also had a liver condition and needed surgery as a baby. The problem is that Laura is exploiting my mother's emotions in order to assist her reconcile with me. Instead of discussing it over the phone, I went to see my mother and discovered that Laura had fed her sob stories to win her back. She stated she was homeless, had no employment or money, and had been living on the streets since her stepfather kicked her out. My mother requested I meet her and I accepted for her sake. Mom contacted Laura, and she arrived within an hour. I probed her aggressively and all of the facts came out. It turns out that her mother and stepfather spoiled her so much that she never finished high school. She was too busy vacationing and dining with them to think about schooling or school. I'm not sure what that man was thinking by indulging her in this way. I'm not sure what her mom was thinking when she allowed this to happen. Lara insisted that everything she did and said, including the parental rights issue and the ghosting, was part of her mother's plan to embarrass me. I asked her why her mother would do such a thing. She said it was because I didn't make enough to purchase her mom high-end clothing and accessories, which had embarrassed her in front of her friends. Lara claimed her mother devised the scheme to shame and humiliate me in front of her new husband. Listening to this was really distressing because it brought back all of the traumatic experiences I had worked so hard to forget. I told Lara that the past was done, her mother was gone, so what did she want from me now? She asked me to accept her as my daughter again. When I questioned what would happen after that, she quickly said, "It means I would be your daughter, and you would have my back." I answered, "Okay, I will accept you as my daughter, but all you will get from me is love. I'm planning to give Emma and Amy my property, insurance money and savings. But I shall cherish you as my eldest daughter. Will that work for you?" She froze. After stammering for a time, she responded, "Yeah, we can discuss money later." "You are not going to make a will now, are you?" I said, "Yes, Emma and Amy are already identified as beneficiaries in my insurance and savings accounts. I also bought a house in the new city and gave it to my second wife Brianna. I won't change any of that for you. If you're good with that, bring me the document I signed giving up my parental rights, and I'll have my lawyer prepare a new one to overturn it." She answered, "Yeah, sure," but remained mute for the rest of the conversation. My mother offered her food, but she rejected, citing a pressing matter. 2 weeks have gone and she has yet to turn up. I pointed this out to my mother, adding that it was all about money. Lara backed off after I informed her I wasn't going to give her any. What a useless piece of work she is. Update 2. I warned you it was all about money, and it certainly is. Lara returned to my mother's house 2 weeks ago, despite the fact that we had last spoken 4 months ago. She looked awful, with red puffy eyes covered in dark rings and rashes all over her body, possibly caused by swallowing something she was sensitive to. She was crying and screaming for assistance. She demanded money from my mother. Lara explained that she had been living with a friend since her stepfather disowned her, but that friend had now thrown her out as well. She claimed to have sold the majority of her items to buy food in recent months, but she now had no money or possessions. Mom questioned why she hadn't acquired a job. Lara claimed she dropped out of school and no one would hire her. Mom recommended communicating with a friend who manages a bakery to see if she could get Lara a job as a cleaner or something similar. After all, there are many careers that do not require a high school graduation. Lara remained mute and wailed, asking my mother for money. Mom gave her some packaged meals and $100. She also questioned why Lara had not brought the paperwork to challenge the disownment. Lara stated that it was at her stepfather's place and that she would retrieve it next time. She accepted the money and food, then left. Mom didn't tell me about this visit at first because she assumed I'd be upset with her. 3 days earlier, Lara returned to my mother's house with the same sob story. Mom asked what she did with the money, and Lara responded she spent it on groceries. When Mom inquired about the job, Lara did not provide a direct answer. This time, Mom refused to give her any more money, claiming she didn't have any to spare and no more food. She simply handed her a loaf of bread. As Lara was preparing to leave, Mom inquired whether she had changed her mind about being my daughter. Lara responded, "What is the sense of having him as my father if he isn't going to give me any money? He has given everything to his beggar stepchildren." Mom was taken aback by her statements and chased her out of the house, threatening her not to return. Mom quickly called to tell me about both trips. I did feel upset with her for assisting Lara the first time, and I warned Mom to be cautious while answering the door at night. Based on Mom's description of Lara's appearance, it appears that she is engaged with bad company and may pose a threat to Mom, especially since she is living alone following Dad's death last year. We want to seek a restraining order against Lara in case she returns and causes trouble again. Today I went to my mom's residence. I went outside to see whether Lara was around, but I couldn't find her. I will be staying here for a week. I don't know what to do, but I'm sad about her. If what she said about my ex-wife is correct, my ex went too far in her attempts to disgrace me, destroying her own daughter's life. If Lara is lying about it, she has already paid the price for her nasty behavior. By the way, Someone remarked on my previous post that everyone has the freedom to make their own decisions, and Lara wasn't bad for choosing her stepfather over me. She was simply on the wrong side. I suppose that's true. She made a decision 10 years ago, and she has to live with the consequences for the rest of her life. Fiancé took our dog for a walk while I was getting ready for dinner and it led to a heated argument. Am I the asshole? Original post. It feels ridiculous to ask about this, but I'm starting to think I'm missing some key bit of information here. I guess I'm asking that if I am, why? Because it wasn't my intention, and I certainly would like to prevent it from happening again. This Friday my wife and I had reservations at her favorite restaurant, because her birthday is right around the corner. We had a party planned, but this was supposed to be our night together alone. The way the reservation was set up, I would come home from work, change and immediately drive there as it's around an hour and a half by car. Yes, we live in hick country. Yes, I am a hick, and no, we aren't moving that I've been made aware of, lol. The day had gone great so far, and from what I knew everything was going according to plan. I got home, and she's behind schedule getting ready. This is not something that happens for her ever, and I was surprised, but the reason wasn't her fault, and it was barely a 20-minute deviation. However, I was just waiting by the door during that time and the dog decided he needed out, so I took him for a walk around our yard. It took maybe 5 minutes. And I cleaned everything up and had him put up before my wife was ready. We made it to the dinner reservation by the skin of our teeth, and that was that. We had a great date and I would have never known she was upset with me until the next morning, when she said that she had never known me to be so impatient. Which confused me, and she rolled her eyes and said she noticed that I took the dog for a walk before we left to make her hurry, and that she just didn't want to let my bad mood ruin the night. I had been in a great mood, and told her so, but she refused to believe it, and got pretty angry, which I haven't been able to calm her down from to even talk about all this again. I really don't understand what I've done wrong here, and I don't know what to do. AITA? OP's comments. Commenter, NTA, it sounds like she may really be annoyed about something else. Try talking again to see if you can get under the real issue. Did something happen at work or did she have another expectation that was not met? OP, not that she talked about. The day went pretty well from what I know, but I'll definitely try to talk to her about her job. She hasn't had any trouble from this lot yet that I know of, but it is a newer job, and there may be things I don't know. Thank you. I probably wouldn't have ever connected that it could be related to work. Commenter, NTA. Can you lay it out clearly for your wife that you don't understand what went wrong? Hell, maybe just show her this post. I'm assuming the anger is out of character for her, so a conversation is a good idea. OP. Yeah, neither of us are angry people. That's the biggest reason I posted. She's been pretty annoyed with me before, but this is different. Commenter, yeah, that's very odd then. There might be some other stuff brewing under the surface, or she was just really tired that day? OP. Someone mentioned work stuff and I'm gonna ask about that. She did start a new job not too long ago, and even though she hasn't said anything to me yet, it's new enough that I wouldn't know yet. Commenter. I am not seeing anything that you did wrong here. Do you know why she was 20 minutes late getting dressed? Maybe the reason she was late getting ready is tied to what made her get upset. Taking the dog out was not wrong. It isn't like you walked around the block. You stayed in your own yard. OP. Yeah, she had gotten ready at our neighbor and her friend's house up a small hill, and walked back over, but took a tumble on the way. She wasn't hurt at all, but she had to change her dress and fix her hair. Not the first time she's fallen like that, and I worry about it. But she says it isn't a big deal. Commenter. My dad used to do this action every time we went out. This is his silent way of telling us, hurry up, don't make me wait. Maybe someone did this to your wife in the past, so she got irritated when you did it. Oop. Huh, yeah. She's never said anything about that, but I can see how that would have ticked her off in that case. Thank you so much for the advice. And I should edit that thanks into the post. Less than 20 comments and almost every one of them have brought up something I didn't think of. Commenter, NTA. Maybe she has an undiagnosed UTI or she's unaware that she's pregnant and hormonal. If this is not normal, then those are the first two medical options. After that she has built up resentment over something or this is a trigger from her childhood. OOP, UTI? Those are pretty dangerous. I think that's what put my mom in the hospital last time. Do you think that's really a possibility? Update post. Hello. I feel weird updating, but I have good news and want to share somewhere. And here seems as good a place as any right now. And actually, I wanted to thank everyone for commenting, and the people who reached out privately with advice. You really helped me calm down and figure out how to approach talking about this while seeing where my wife could have been coming from. One person even called exactly what was going on, something I dismissed right away, stupidly. So I came home the next day and brought home pizza from her favorite spot in town, which we never get because of crowds, because I figured even if I wasn't outright wrong, there was no reason not to make the conversation nice. So after dinner, I asked about the dog again, and after a lot of back and forth and crying that I'll skip explaining, she explained that for the past week or so she had been feeling weirdly emotional, and she couldn't explain it. Some people had mentioned some things here about different health stuff that could cause those sorts of symptoms, and I got pretty nervous and got her in at her doctor's office within a couple of days. Well, imagine our embarrassment walking out 5 minutes after getting in and doing a test we could have done at home, for like $20, without including insurance companies. She is going to talk to her therapist about meeting every week for a while she adjusts deals with hormonal changes. We've been laughing about it now because it never crossed our minds she could have been pregnant. Someone commented on it, but I still didn't believe it, because I am dumb. Never mind that we're both in our 20s or that she switched birth control like 2 months ago, and we may or may not have had unprotected sex during the switch week. Anyway, as stupid as we may be, we are still excited but waiting until the 12-week mark to tell our families. However, I've been itching to tell someone and can't wait any longer. So here's an update. Haha. Wife approved, because it's anonymous. Thanks again for the help. I appreciate it a lot, even if I didn't take the advice of the person who was right. Comment. Commenter. Congrats. And maybe still have that talk with your neighbor about the path to make sure she stays safe. OOP, already working on it. The neighbor isn't against the idea, just against paying for it, haha. Which is no problem for me, since I'm the only one complaining. $10K and boyfriend wanted a car, but after a big fight, I spent it all. Now he's angrier than ever, and I don't know how to confess. Original post. He's a full-time student who works part-time in the summer. I have a full-time and part-time job. He studies a lot. We live together and mostly live off my pay while he stretches what he makes in the summer. Neither of us have ever owned a car because it isn't necessary where we live. We both walk or take the public everywhere to save money. In the morning we stop at a corner shop shortly before splitting up for the day. He buys cigarettes and coffee. I buy fruit for my lunch and, on the weekends, lotto tickets. He always makes fun of me for paying the stupid tax. But I figure my indulgence is cheaper and doesn't come with lung cancer. Sometimes I jokingly tell him not to expect a penny when I win. The day I won he answered me with fine, keep it all. It's not like I'm crying over a penny of nothing over here. I showed him I'd won. He stared for a bit and then dismissively told me I'd probably spent more than that on tickets. In response I asked what I should blow his half on for myself. I was honestly joking at the time, but he suddenly became angrier than I've ever seen him, and I didn't want to admit I'd been kidding because he was so pissed off it pissed me off. He wants a car, and I don't. He keeps trying to steamroller me, so I'm refusing to share the money. In honesty, I'm willing to spend or save the money for us, but I don't want a car. I won't use a car and it will keep costing us money in parking and maintenance. After weeks of him sulking and lecturing me about his entitlement to the money, he took me to a car lot and tried to embarrass me into going along with him in front of a salesman. I threw a tantrum after we left without buying anything, and I went to my mom's and paid our rent up to the end of the year and donated the rest to charity. He doesn't know. I fucked up and don't know how to come clean. Teal doctor, I haven't told my boyfriend I spent the money I won because I was upset he was being a dick. He's already angry at me. What should I do? Top comments. Comment 1. I fucked up and don't know how to come clean. I don't think you fucked up at all. Comment 2. Me neither. You spent your money buying the tickets, it's technically your winning money. It's not like you're married, that'd be a little different. He's just mad that he didn't support your buying the tickets in the first place, so now he looks entitled. I think you spent the money very wisely. Plus now he doesn't have to worry about rent. He better not complain. Comment 3. Agree. The only way this would be a fuck up is if OP has a tax bill coming due to the winning with no funds, anymore, to pay it. OOP. No. I rounded down to $10,000 because I was counting after tax and a celebratory dinner. Comment 4. All in all, OP, you sound like a very level-headed person. Your boyfriend, on the other hand, sounds like a huge jerk. Why are you with someone who treats you like that? Comment 5. You paid up rent for both of you, or just yourself? OP. It's my place from before dating him. I never ask him for rent because it cost me the same either way. Comment 6. Just to be clear, he's living rent-free and you share finances, meaning you pay for everything unless his part-time job gives him enough hours. And he's demanding more money from you? Comment 7. I think you should seriously consider everyone's responses. Your boyfriend does not sound like he's respectful or appreciative of the effort you put into your relationship. That said, do you mean that your dad gave you money when you turned 18 so you could get yourself out of an abusive situation if you had to? Because that's the first I've heard of a parent doing that, but it's seriously an awesome idea. I know a few women who keep saving specifically because they want to have insurance in case of a bad situation, but never a parent initiates that sort of savings. If I ever have children, I'm totally stealing that idea. OOP, yeah, my dad sat me down and gave me the grown-up talk about verbal and physical abuse and consent. How to recognize it, what to do, how not to be abusive. Then he gave me the money and explained how to use it. He did this for all his kids, boy or girl. Update. Long story short, a couple months before I won, my boyfriend had secretly dropped out of school to join a Christian rock band. He's not Christian, and began to cover his new coke habit, which explains so much. He took me winning as a sign they were about to make it and should go on tour. That's why he wanted the car so damn much. Obviously we had a huge fight. I sacrificed a lot because he told me he'd never be happy without that degree and he threw it away to play rockstar while I ground myself down at dead-end jobs. I told him I agreed to support him through one dream and if he was done with it I was going after my dreams now. He made all kinds of promises to me about how he'll take care of me when he gets famous, but I told him the only promises I cared about were the ones he made when I agreed to help him through school. He broke up with me until I came to your senses. As far as I'm concerned, that's already happened, so I had his brother pick up his stuff. He tried to cause problems with me illegally evicting him, but I reminded him I had some text conversations where he said, "Your apartment is your problem, and I don't live there anymore, so deal with it." I have no idea if that's legally enforceable, but neither does he. My lease is up in 3 months and I won't have to worry about it after that. It's been really rough accepting he's not the guy I fell in love with anymore, but the way he's been acting has made it a lot easier. I'm mostly angry I sunk so much of my time and money and compromised my future for him. But I guess it's better I found out now instead of later. I got tested in case he cheated or was doing other drugs and so far so good. I'm also 9,000% sure my ex staged the 3 break-ins we had in our apartment after one of his friends told me around that time my then BF was trying to sell my prescriptions and his laptop, that I ended up replacing FFS, that were supposedly stolen. I told the cops and his friend agreed to make a statement, but IDK what's happening with that yet. Other than that, I'm happy to report I'm only working one job now that's actually something I want to do and pays way more. My apartment is much nicer without his junk and now the toilet is never unflushed and the seat is always down, so I've got that going for me too. With all my free time I've rescued a kitty and I'm learning to knit. I was planning on becoming an old cat lady, but I also went on my second first date ever. It was with another woman, which was kind of a surprise but also somehow not. We've got a second date planned and I'm incredibly giddy with anticipation, which is really nice. Oh, and I told my dad how much you liked his dump him fun consent conversation, and he said his grandma gave him one when he decided to get married at 18, not my mom, so he can't take credit for the idea. Edit. Thanks for all the well wishes everyone. TL.dr, boyfriend dumped me, can't complain. Top comments. Comment 1. Sorry he turned out to be such a heel. Getting dumped is never fun, but a bullet was definitely dodged here. My apartment is much nicer without his junk and now the toilet is never unflushed and the seat is always down, so I've got that going for me. Which is nice. Comment 2. Being dumped is never fun, but I think in OP's case, it's the best thing that could have happened to her, lol. And can't forget, with all my free time I've rescued a kitty, yay to rescue animals. Comment 3. Entitled a coke addict, a thief, etc. etc. What a complete pile of human garbage. Congratulations on getting rid of him. Enjoy doing you, OP. Comment 4. LOL, and wanted to be in a Christian rock band. Hilarious when you consider all of those factors together. Comment 5. The toilet is never unflushed. The fuck? Did he not flush? OOP. Not usually, which made it so much more lovelier that time I forgot to check the seat and fell in. Comment 6. Yay kitty cat. Also, while this all really sucked for you to live through, I am sure that it will be the most delightful of anecdotes. Dropped out of school to join a Christian rock band is just about the dumbest life plan I can think of, especially given the general state of the music industry as a whole and of Christian rock in particular. OOP. It's very unlike him. I thought he was messing with me until he showed me the videos. Not good. IDK. If coke explains all of what's going on, there may be other drugs I don't know about. He's not the same as when we met, I know that much. I posted an update to RR's relationships after asking for advice, and someone recommended I make sure I can't get in legal trouble over the situation. I live in CA and have had my apartment for 4 years. My ex lived with me for 3 years. He never paid rent or was on the lease. My landlord knew he was there and he got mail there. My lease is up in 3 months and I'm planning on moving. He left willingly, and when I texted him about some damage he'd done to the building that he'd promised our landlord he'd fix, he sent me 2 texts that I kept copies of saying, "Your apartment is your problem and I don't live there anymore, so deal with it." He sent his brother to my place to pick up some music equipment, and I had his brother take all his stuff with him. My ex texted me angrily about how I couldn't just illegally evict him, but backed off when I sent him screenshots of the texts. Also, the police are currently investigating him for 3 break-ins to my apartment when he lived there, based on one of his friends making a statement that he tried to sell him my prescriptions and his laptop around that time. I don't know if that's relevant. Could he cause me any legal problems?